Chapter 49-45. Because JoJo's medical skills were superb and she provided free treatment, the villagers naturally did their best to curry favor with her. They were even quite envious of Sister Feng's family for being able to pick up JoJo first. Mo wanted to tell JoJo that it wasn't worth it to sulk over these people. But she just couldn't express herself. After trying for a long time, she could only spit out 3 words with great difficulty. It was so strenuous that she was so anxious that she paced back and forth around JoJo. Arbor suddenly wanted to laugh and pulled the pacing Mo to sit down beside her. She said softly, "I'm not angry." She was indeed in a bad mood just now. After all, she had lived in the fishing village for close to a month. Sister Feng's fearful appearance earlier made her feel a little uncomfortable. But forget it. Not everyone in this world could like JoJo. There would always be people who liked her and people who hated her. This was a very normal phenomenon. It was fine as long as she got over it. She wasn't a morning glory that faced the sun and had to make everyone like her. There was no need for this and no need to be conflicted. The fishing village was equivalent to a small stop in her life journey. She wouldn't come back once she passed it. JoJo, freshly baked roasted sweet potatoes. It's very sweet. Come and try it. While she was pondering, she heard Duan Yu's voice. She looked up and saw this guy's moon-white clothes fluttering past her. He was holding a plate of roasted sweet potatoes with both hands and was smiling at her with curved eyes. Those rippling peach blossom eyes seemed to faintly flicker with the light of shattered stars. This was a huge headache. One had to look forward in life, so they naturally had to eat. Let's go take a look at the entrance to the sacrificial sea's abyss later. We have to dig 3 feet into the ground to dig those 2 idiots out. Arbor nibbled on the roasted sweet potato in her hand, a hint of sweetness in her mouth. She was different from her mother. She definitely wasn't destined to be alone. Even if their kinship was extremely thin, JoJo had a lover, a sect, and so many friends. There was nothing that JoJo couldn't face. Half a month ago, I followed your aura and found the wreckage of a ship. After that, I sent people to search the surface of the sea. They didn't find you, but they did find many people from various aristocratic families. Your Mu family is safe and sound. I've already sent people to send them back to Dragonflame City. Xiao Mu's fair fingers twitched as she recalled little Fifth Qin, whose complexion was a bit pale. When he let her go, he said that he would take care of everything over there. Therefore the Mu clans Ting Yun Yunji, Murong Yen, and the others were also released by the Zither cultivator? Xiao Mu had mixed feelings, and she didn't know what to say. The Qin family is the mastermind behind the heavenly fate. Arbor looked up at Duan Yu with a listless expression. JoJo is too stupid and has been kept in the dark by them. Nonsense. Duan Yu peeled another sweet potato for her and fed it to the little stoic. They hid themselves so well that no one noticed. You're not the only one who was fooled. Everyone was dumbfounded. This was the true terror of these people from the Qin estate. Now that I've seen through their identities, do you think they'll still return to Dragonflame City? Duan Yu nodded. They naturally won't stay in the Qin estate in Dragonflame City anymore. They'll probably move to a secret location and continue hiding. They can gather a lot of information while hiding in Dragonflame City. Most likely, not all of them will withdraw. Arbor thought about it and agreed. Chapter 49-46. If she were the Qin estate's patriarch, she naturally wouldn't give up the connections she had painstakingly built up in the capital of the Divine Province for so many years. Alright, don't think too much. Go and sleep first, alright? Duan Yu felt a bit stifled as he looked at the little stoic's small face. She seemed to be thinner than a palm, and he felt even more stifled. When Prince Mo, that scoundrel, saw that his wife had lost so much weight, he might even shamelessly chase after him and beat him up. There was no reasoning with that guy. He wasn't someone who could reason with others. Arbor was indeed a bit sleepy. She had been on tenterhooks these past few days and couldn't eat or sleep well. Now that she saw Duan Yu, she relaxed a lot. After eating 2 fist-sized sweet potatoes, her body was warm and her stomach was full. She took out a sleeping bag from her inner world and Sir JoJo crawled inside. This spirit artifact cabin was quite spacious. Other than Wui and Xiaoyi, who were by Duan Yu's side. The other hidden guards were arranged to be on other flying spirit artifacts. After Jojo installed a sleeping bag on the spacious seat in the spirit artifact cabin, Duan Yu's lips curled. He raised his hand to set up a soundproof defensive wall near the seat to prevent her from rolling down from her seat with the sleeping bag. Moe swayed back and forth outside the defensive wall. He looked up at Duan Yu before swaying to a seat and sitting down. He obediently and expressionlessly continued to stare blankly. Duan Yu looked back at Jojo, who had burrowed into the sleeping bag, and thought, "Jojo, I wish you a good night's sleep. Don't worry about anything because I'm here." Ming Province's Great Yong City, Eastern Palace, Crown Prince Estate. Ming Yasi coldly gazed at the people before him. His gaze landed on a graceful woman with a white veil covering her face. "Your Honorable Highness the Crown Prince of Ming Province." The leader, a middle-aged man, placed a hand across his chest and bowed to Ming Yasi. "It would be better for you to personally inspect this precious gift." Ming Yasi coldly stared at them and ordered coldly, "Woman, remove the veil on your face and let me see who exactly you are." These uninvited guests from the grassland had tried every possible means to see him, saying that they wanted to present him with a treasure. Was it this woman in front of him who smelled like a prostitute? A trace of disgust flashed through Ming Yasi's eyes. Did he look like such a stupid person? Would he casually accept a woman of unknown origin? At this thought, the woman in the white veil gracefully reached out and took off her veil, revealing an exquisite face the size of a palm. She smiled at the dumbfounded Ming Yasi with her big watery eyes. She bowed and said, "Greetings, Your Highness." Dark Yas glared at the familiar face in front of him, his eyes revealing traces of ferocity. What a beauty! Who substituted the plum for the peach? Do they think that anything in this world can be replaced? What a joke! He finally understood what was going on. The cold light in his eyes turned into a substantial killing intent. "You've looked for the Emperor of Tsong Prefecture before, right? No wonder Duan Yu, that guy, seemed to have gone mad recently and dispatched an extremely powerful army to the Pingjin Prairie to hunt down the people of the state of Luo. So that's how it was. When the leader of the envoy from the state of Luo saw Ming Yasi's reaction, his heart sank. It couldn't be, right? Could it be that this Ming Prefecture's crown prince was as eccentric as the Tsong Prefecture's emperor? That couldn't be, right? Chapter 49-47. It's hard for you to cover such an ugly fake face with a veil. Ming Yas's cold words caused the woman's expression to stiffen. What? Ever since she was perfectly transformed by the transformation potion, although she couldn't compare to the other candidates, she, Lily, or number 5, could already be considered a mid-tier product. It was definitely not something that Lily, or number 9 and 8 could compare to. Every day when she looked in the mirror, she would be mesmerized by her own face. It was simply too perfect, okay? His Highness the Underworld Crown Prince must be blind. Yes, if he wasn't blind, how could he not see how good she was? That man's cold gaze looked through her face as if he was looking at an ancient place. This kind of gaze that disregarded her made Lily, or number 5, feel suffocated and embarrassed. The woman held the white veil in her hand and twisted it tightly. The stifling feeling in her chest was about to make her explode. You really shouldn't have taken off the veil to scare people. Hurry up and put it back. Student Ollie, who was standing behind his elder brother, felt like he was struck by lightning. Sometimes, Big Brother's words were really too hurtful. Cough cough. Lily, or number 5, clutched her chest that was about to explode and panted heavily. She nervously tilted her head and glared at Ming Yas in front of her with hatred and anger. You, back down. The head envoy of Doruo coldly reprimanded. The woman trembled and didn't dare to act rashly. She hurriedly took a few steps back, but her eyes were still filled with resentment and anger. She glared at the expressionless Ming Yas who was sitting on the high seat. This arrogant underworld crown prince made her feel a strong sense of defeat, which made her feel very uncomfortable. Your Highness the Underworld Crown Prince. The head envoy placed his hand across his chest and respectfully bowed to Ming Yas. Our country of Daluo has come here with great sincerity to propose cooperation with you. Doruo is willing to help your highness the crown prince become the true overlord of the upper 3 provinces. Ming Yas couldn't help but sneer when he heard this. How dare a small grassland country talk big and shamelessly point out the world? A faint trace of anger flashed across the face of the head envoy from the country of Doruo. But he quickly suppressed it, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, "You have to believe me. The key lies in the crown princess of the divine land. The crown prince of the divine land is absurd and incompetent. He is a complete slave to his wife, don't you think so?" The corners of Ming Yasi's mouth twitched as he felt an inexplicable urge to burst into laughter. Fuck, he was in the underworld province, and the rumors he heard about the crown prince of the divine land were often such as, the city wall turned into ashes as he talked and laughed. He was as calm and unruffled as the wind and moon. He was extraordinarily heroic and handsome, and so on. He had really never heard of anyone who would use the words incompetent on this guy. As long as we control the crown princess of the divine land, it will be the same as controlling the crown prince of the divine land. Ming Yasi raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, Mo Lian loves his wife like his life and protects her like food. If that's true, we'll swap Lily and the little crown princess of the divine land for the real crown princess by your side. Ming Yasi silently looked at the head envoy who was spouting nonsense in front of him. The head envoy became more and more enthusiastic as he spoke. He even took a step forward, intending to get closer to him. Chapter 49-48. This way, not only will you get what you want, we can also control the lifeline of the divine land's crown prince. From there, we can firmly control the future of the divine land. Ha! This person seemed to have seen a bright future, as if he had already unified the 3 continents. He put his hands on his hips and laughed loudly at Ming Yas. Ming Yas waved his hand expressionlessly. Drag them out and kill them. The head envoy looked at Ming Yas, who sat motionless on the throne and did not even raise his eyebrows. What? Could it be that he had misheard? This crown prince said, "Drag them out and kill them all," Ming Yas ordered indifferently. The head envoy took a step back. Lily, number 5, who was standing behind him, opened her mouth wide. She was so shocked that an egg could be stuffed into her mouth. This underworld crown prince actually gave the order to kill them so casually. What did he take them for? Were they livestock that could be killed wantonly? Damn it. Lily, number 5 clenched her teeth and twisted the white veil in her hand. She screamed sharply, 3 state advisors, what are we waiting for? Kill them all. Kill them all. This underworld crown prince who doesn't know what's good for him should pay the price in blood and go to hell. Without waiting for the head envoy's order, Lily, number 5 impatiently took out a pair of sharp triangular awls from her waist. She screamed angrily and rushed toward Ming Yas on the throne. Ali waved his hand and dozens of secret guards jumped down from the hall. They quickly surrounded and attacked the group of Doruo ambassadors. In the blink of an eye, Lily, number 5 had already rushed in front of Dark Yas with a pair of triangular awls in her hands. Without any explanation, she pushed the sharp awls in her hands towards his chest. Ming Yasi snorted coldly and sneered. Woman who overestimates herself. He shot out his hand like lightning and grabbed his opponent's wrist. Lily, number 5 felt her wrist being pinched by a pair of pliers. The pain was unbearable. However, she only gritted her teeth and tried to twist her wrist but to no avail. She stabbed the triangular awl in her other hand at the back of Ming Yas's hand. You can't even withstand a single blow. With a backhand, Yas slapped the woman's face. After Lily, number 5's tender and fair face took a heavy blow, a faint crack sound could be heard. It was the sound of something cracking. This subtle sound stimulated her heart to thump heavily, and she let out an incomparably sharp cry. Lily hurriedly waved her arm and erected a water spirit defense wall around her body. She then took out a mirror from her sleeve in a panic. Seeing this, he almost fainted from anger. At this moment, Maya stood up and walked down the long steps. His gaze coldly landed on Lily, number 5's face, and he couldn't help but sneer. Look at that fake face of yours. It's cracked now. Looking at you like this is truly disgusting. When had the little stoic ever revealed such a charming expression? Number 101's stoic face hadn't changed at all from beginning to end. When she occasionally cracked open her small mouth and smiled, it was as if red rain was about to fall from the sky. Since you don't want your face, someone, peel off the skin of her face for this prince and give it to that whimsical king of Dorwo. Let him take it back and admire it for himself. Ha! Ming Yas spread his legs and stood ramrod straight as he sneered. Chapter 49-49. No. Her number 5 widened her eyes in horror when she was suddenly startled by a bestial roar. She felt a sudden pain in her chest. When she raised her head to look, she was actually being stepped on by a vigorous calf. That pair of calf eyes flickered with a cold light as they stared fixedly at her, scaring Lily, her number 5, into shrieking uncontrollably. Her entire body trembled as she tried to turn around. State Preceptor, State Preceptor, State Preceptorshant, save me, save. At this moment, a shadow guard holding a thin lancet expressionlessly walked to her side. Lily, her number 5, felt a trace of fear that she had never felt before. Her entire body trembled violently as she begged in panic, Your Highness, I was wrong, I know I was wrong. Your Highness, please spare me, spare my life. Stiasai sneered, What use do I have for your life? Lily, her number 5, widened her eyes in horror. Her hands tightly covered her cheeks as she screamed, No, you can't take away my face, you can't. Hee. Stiasai's sneer interrupted the woman's screams. You think you're worthy of looking like the crown princess? You lowly woman, you shameless thing. You're only worthy of hiding in a dark ditch, forever being a dirty and ugly smelly rat. 15 minutes later, Lily, her number 5, was thrown to the ground. Her hands were stained with blood as she trembled and covered her face. Her body was curled up in pain as she gasped for breath. You son of a bitch, son of a bitch. Her curses were stopped abruptly by the shadow guard's whip on her back. Your Highness, that head envoy fled in a panic with injuries. The rest were killed on the spot. Oh! Stiasai smiled as he glanced at Lily, her number 5, who was curled up on the ground. Looks like he's not weak. Stiasai's smile disappeared as he coldly ordered, Close all the city gates and arrest this person. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Yes, Your Highness. Arbor crawled out of the sleeping bag with a head full of disheveled hair. He looked at the smooth blue sky above his head and was momentarily at a loss. She flipped over and sat up. Only then did she remember that she was currently in a spirit artifact cabin in the Tsang province. They had already left the barren fishing village, which was short of supplies. Why didn't you sleep a bit longer? We haven't arrived yet. Duan Yu slowly walked over and smiled at her. I slept for a long time. It wasn't that long. Duan Yu walked to her side. Only a little over 2 hours. Oh! Arbor felt that he was in good spirits. Although he didn't sleep for a long time, it was still a good sleep. He didn't have any of those messy dreams. We should be able to reach the entrance of the sacrificial sea by 10 o'clock in the evening. Jojo, I'll bring some people down to take a look. You stay up here. Arbor reached out and touched his belly. He thought for a few seconds and nodded obediently. Duan Yu smiled. Oh right, you're divine conscious. At the mention of this, Arbor became a bit angry. She pursed her lips and said, I take soul-soothing pills every few days. I still have to wait for my divine conscious to fully recover before I can open the star domain. I estimated that there's still about 6 to 7 days. Duan Yu nodded. Don't worry, take it slow. Chapter 49-50. Arbor thought that this was the only way. It wasn't a matter of a day or two that her soul was unstable. Previously, in the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm, she had already stabilized her soul by withdrawing a fragment of her soul. If it weren't for the help of that soul fragment, it would probably take even longer to recover. Arbor reflexively stroked her left palm. Sometimes, she seemed to be able to feel the Fushi greatsword in her body impatiently wanting to jump out. Soon, old friend, I'll be able to properly meet you very soon. Your Majesty. A hidden guard hastily walked into the spirit tool cabin and stood at the door, bowing respectfully. Jojo, dinner has already been prepared for you. Go eat first. I'll go see what's going on. Arbor glanced at him and nodded as she climbed out of the sleeping bag. You have to tell me if there's anything. People like them always like to hide everything from Jojo, which was especially annoying. Okay. Duan Yu nodded with a smile and turned to leave with the muttering hidden guard. Sir Jojo rolled out of the sleeping bag with a grumble. His eyes suddenly brightened as he rubbed his slightly warm stomach. It was very strange. She could almost grasp the baby's rhythm now. When it was mealtime, he would definitely remind her to eat. 3 meals a day plus 2 snacks were enough. When it was time, her stomach would heat up slightly. This was the master inside reminding her to eat quickly. This child was definitely a foodie, the little stoic inwardly thought expressionlessly. He was definitely like his dad. There were 6 dishes and 1 soup for dinner. The little stoic ate quite well. Moe sat on a stool on the side and dazedly watched her eat. After the little stoic finished eating, she put down her chopsticks and felt her stomach heat up slightly. Mother can't eat anymore. It's not good for indigestion, she muttered to herself and rubbed her stomach. When she looked up, she saw Duan Yu walking in with a plate of delicious roasted fish. Jojo, this colorful divine fish. Xiao Mu stood up abruptly and jogged to his side with her little legs, considerately taking the plate from his hands. Strange, my stomach seems to be craving this colorful divine fish even though I can't eat anymore. What's wrong, Jojo? Nothing. Arbor picked up the chopsticks and tried to pick up the ordinary braised fish with soy sauce at the side. His stomach was still, and there was no reaction at all. She turned to pick up the colorful divine fish, and her stomach instantly warmed up. It was as if baby Mo was urging her to hurry through her stomach. Arbor tried a few more dishes thoughtfully before he put down his chopsticks in realization. Her child seemed to be more interested in food that contained divine power. Whenever her chopsticks touched food that contained divine or spiritual power, her stomach would heat up to varying degrees. Was this a signal from Hua? Jojo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had the urge to roll his eyes. This child hasn't even been born yet. How old is he? He's already taking care of his mother's daily needs. However, she ate too much ordinary food today and didn't want to eat food that contained divine power anymore. Forget it, she'll try again tomorrow. Duan Yu sat next to her and watched her move her chopsticks from east to west. His gaze followed her back and forth. Not eating anymore? I'm stuffed. Then get up and walk. I'll help you digest. Duan Yu's gaze shifted to her stomach and he asked softly, does he know? He doesn't. Arbor was dejected. What a pig head. Chapter 4951. Don't worry, the next time we meet, I'll beat him up on Jojo's behalf. Jojo should be beaten to death for making Jojo worry about him for so long. Arbor sniffed. Last time in the mystic realm, I finally managed to use the projection of ancient Emolien's soul to speak to him. But later on I don't know what happened, but the image was abruptly cut off. Jojo didn't even have time to tell her husband about baby Mo. Duan Yu looked down at Sir Jojo. What a pig head, so stupid. It's fine, I'll beat him to death for you later to vent your anger. Arbor glanced at him and thought, you're the one who came up with an excuse to beat him up, right? Just now, why did that person come to find you? It's nothing major, I can resolve it easily. Duan Yu casually brushed it off with a smile. As if I'd believe you. Arbor glared at him and grumpily harumphed. This person had the same personality as Jojo's Lotus. He would usually sneak around and pretend to be calm in front of her. No matter how big the issue was, it would become a trivial matter in their mouths. Duan Yu smiled innocently at her and walked several rounds around the spirit artifact cabin with her. Jojo, have you gained weight? You're the one who's gained weight. Duan Yu reflexively pinched his chin. Compared to when we first met, I have gained quite a bit of weight. That's right. When I first saw you, you looked like a monkey. Not only was he ugly, but he also had a wicked heart. He kept trying to trick Jojo, so he deserved to be beaten up by Jojo. Duan Yu, he was such an exquisite and handsome man in the capital, but there wasn't anything good coming out of this little fellow's mouth. You still dare to say that back then? You even broke my bones. Heh. Who told you to trick Jojo? Was Sir Jojo so easy to trick? Duan Yu pursed his lips, and his footsteps paused as he looked at Xiaoyi, who was walking towards him. Go do your thing. Arbor knew that she must have something to do, but he didn't want to tell her and make her upset. All right, if you're tired, you can sleep a little longer. Arbor nodded. She was in good spirits now. She planned to take out the crystal core of the sacred beast ichthyosaur and study it. If only he could get in touch with his friends in the star field. He could let the three little puppies see if the crystal core of the sacred beast ichthyosaur was effective on them. After Duan Yu hurriedly left with Xiaoyi, Arbor strolled around the spirit artifact cabin a few times before sitting down to rest. With a flip of his hand, he took out the ichthyosaur crystal core from his storage talisman and squinted his eyes at the light. This crystal core was filled with boundless saint energy. Just by looking at it with the naked eye, one would feel that the saint energy within it was like a raging wave. He wondered if the three little puppies, with their small bodies, could withstand the saint power. After studying it for a while, Arbor put it away again. Seeing that the sky outside was gradually turning dark, Sir Jojo didn't feel sleepy at all, so she simply closed her eyes and regulated her breathing for a while. When she opened her eyes again, she discovered that the air transportation spirit artifact had already stopped in midair. She stood up and called for a hidden guard to inquire. It was only then that she found out that they had already arrived at the entrance to the abyss of the sacrificial sea an hour ago. Duan Yu had already led some people down by now. Sir Jojo knitted her brows in displeasure when this person didn't call for her even after arriving. That hidden guard lowered his head and said, "His Majesty, please wait inside the cabin for a while. There's no need to go down." Arbor was silent for a moment as she paced back and forth inside the spirit artifact cabin. Chapter 4952. She kept feeling uneasy and uneasy. I'll go take a look. She walked to the spirit artifact cabin door and said to the hidden guard, "Take a look at the situation. I'll come back immediately." But His Majesty instructed, "I'm just going to take a look at the surface of the sea. I won't go to the cave entrance." Even now, she still had some psychological trauma from that bottomless pit in the sacrificial sea abyss. When she recalled how she fumbled about in the darkness, unable to see her fingers in front of her, she felt a bit uncomfortable. Staying in that kind of place for too long would really drive one crazy. The hidden guard couldn't persuade the little stoic, but he also didn't dare to offend her, so he could only meekly open the spirit artifact cabin door and accompany her down. The surface of the sea was illuminated quite brightly by the illumination pearls. Xiaoyi was currently hovering near the entrance to the sacrificial sea abyss with a group of hidden guards. When he looked up and saw a young hidden guard leading the little stoic down, he couldn't help but frown and glare fiercely at that young hidden guard. "What's going on? Sir Xiaoyi, this subordinate couldn't dissuade Mississippi." Xiaoyi hovered above the sea and took a step forward in Arbor's direction. He bowed and said, "Miss, it's not appropriate for you to go down with your health condition." Arbor nodded expressionlessly at him. "Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you. I promised Duan Yu that I wouldn't go down, so I won't go back on my word." Xiaoyi sighed in relief and nodded with a smile. "All right then. You still need to be careful at the cave entrance." Arbor had actually paced back and forth near the sacrificial sea abyss countless times. In the past, when she was alone, she would swim here from the small fishing village every night and sit at the cave entrance pitifully waiting for Jojo's lotus. Everyone always said she was a person with great fortune. In the end, she waited for a full month and didn't see her husband. What good fortune? She had nothing. Sir Jojo took out a furry cloak from his inner world and wrapped himself in it before summoning an eggshell defensive barrier to encircle himself. Xiaoyi's mouth twitched. He then saw the little girl roll around like a small round egg until she reached the entrance to the sacrificial sea abyss and sat there motionlessly with her chin propped up. The little stoic's movements were especially adept. It probably wasn't her first time activating her eggshell defensive barrier and sitting at the cave entrance, anxiously waiting. Xiaoyi originally wanted to persuade her to return to the spirit artifact cabin, but she swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue. This kind of silent waiting should be very understandable. Although she didn't say a word of worry, in reality the little stoic's heart was extremely anxious and restless. In the latter half of the night, it started to drizzle. Xiao Yi couldn't help but step forward to persuade him. Arbor was getting more and more worried. Why didn't you come back after so long? Don't worry, nothing will happen. Look at the rain, it seems to be getting heavier. Xiao Yi advised softly, Miss, you should return to the spirit artifact cabin first. Xiao Mu turned around to look at that pitch-black pit, feeling her heart sink. Suddenly, a luminous pearl was thrown up from the entrance of the cave. It quickly leaped into the air, making the surrounding luminous pearls even brighter. Arbor's eyes brightened, and she quickly looked down. Duan Yu led a group of people and swiftly leaped to the surface of the sea. He couldn't help but be taken aback when he saw Arbor wrapped in an eggshell. It's so late. Why aren't you resting? Duan Yu irritably flicked her outer eggshell. Didn't you promise me to obediently stay in the spirit artifact cabin and not come down? Chapter 4953. Sir Jojo glanced at him guiltily and murmured, worried. Duan Yu's heart softened, and he gazed at her gently. He patted her head through the defensive barrier. What's there to worry about? You're truly a little fool. Hurry, let's go. The rain is getting heavier. Let's talk inside the cabin. Arbor couldn't resist pursing her lips. He made it sound like the heavy rain would affect him. In reality, when those raindrops and mist were a few feet away from him, they were evaporated by his sacred power. Not a single drop could touch him. Arbor gazed at Duan Yu, who was happily eating a bowl of noodles, with an indescribable gaze. Jojo, your 100 treasures food box is really kanji, rice noodles and all kinds of food. When he came up earlier he grumbled, I'm hungry. It would be great if there was a bowl of piping hot noodles right now. In the end, the little girl expressionlessly took out a food box and immediately placed a bowl of mushroom, vegetable, and shredded pork noodles for him for the rest of the day. Mother will not eat anything else. The little stoic raised her hand to rub her stomach, dispersing the restless heat from the child in her belly. She didn't want to eat until she was full and then digest. From her doctor's point of view, she had indeed eaten a bit too much today. You can speak now. When the little stoic saw him put down his bowl and chopsticks, she immediately pressed him with a serious expression. What's the situation inside the abyss of the sacrificial sea? The entrance is completely blocked. From the looks of it, there should have been a fierce battle inside. If we want to dig open the entrance, it will take at least half a month to do it bit by bit with manpower. We need to use a spiritual energy bead to blast it open. That could be even worse. Duan Yu sternly said to her, the path below is completely sealed off by the glacier. The layer of ice is very thick. If we use a spiritual energy bead to blast it open, I'm afraid the cave entrance won't be preserved. At that time, the entire entrance to the sacrificial sea abyss will collapse, and it will be even more troublesome. Arbor thought about it and agreed. After a moment of silence, he said, then tell me, what should we do? Dig. Since they couldn't use external forces to open the passage, they could only use manpower to dig. Therefore, we may have to spend some time here. But your body, I'm fine. Arbor quickly straightened his back. You don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. After a few days, when his divine sense was restored, there should be no problem. Duan Yu glanced at her. All right then. If you feel any discomfort, you must tell me as soon as possible. Okay. Arbor nodded. For the next 5 to 6 days, Duan Yu led Xiaoyi and the others to dive into the abyss of the sacrificial sea every day to excavate the passage entrance. Arbor spent most of his time sitting in the eggshell defensive shield, anxiously looking at the bottomless pit. When they came up, he would sit there for most of the day. On this day, Arbor sat at the entrance of the cave as usual, staring blankly at the bottomless pit. Suddenly, she heard a familiar and excited voice. Master Silver, Master Silver, Master Silver. Arbor instantly perked up. At first, she thought she was hearing things. Soon after, she saw the little tree ant and the little water droplet abruptly jump out of the star domain and onto her head, one on the left and one on the right. Master Silver, what happened? You worried us to death. That's right, that's right. What happened to your conscience? Chapter 4954. Arbor was also very excited. Previously, I used the Fushi Greatsword twice in a row, causing my soul to become unstable and my consciousness to be damaged. The star domain automatically became silent and sealed. I've made you guys worry. I was really worried to death. The little tray ant smacked its lips. When I think of Master fighting so many bad people outside alone, my heart almost hurts to death. Seeing this, the little water child punched the Trent's head. I see you eating and sleeping every day, but I don't see you being that worried about Master. The little tray ant flailed its arms and legs and said angrily, "What do you know? You usually see me as calm on the surface, but my heart is already fluctuating." Arbor, these two little things, as soon as they came out, they started fighting like dogs. It really made one feel very helpless. Master, the little monkey is trying to come out, the little tray ant suddenly said. Arbor was slightly startled, then quickly nodded. Hurry and let her out. The little monkey must have sensed Mo's aura. When Xiaomu turned around to look, she saw Emoli sitting beside her in a daze with her head lowered. She was racking her brains over something. Big sister. The little monkey was released, and quickly pounced on Mo, who was sitting beside Arbor. With this pounce, half of her body pounced out from Mo's transparent figure. Arbor raised her hand to her forehead and quickly pulled this impetuous girl back. After a period of treatment, the little monkey's fur on her body and face had already faded by 70 to 80%, and she gradually transformed into a delicate and pretty little girl. She looked at Mo excitedly, then glanced at Arbor. Little big sister, my big sister, she's back, right? This is a fragment of Mo's soul that I found in the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm. It shouldn't be complete. Arbor nodded and said, but I can be sure that Mo definitely didn't disappear from this world. She can definitely recover. The little monkey's eyes immediately turned red. She nodded and choked with sobs as she said, yes, that's great. Yes, that's great. Arbor thought, that lonely soul that drifted in the void for 3,000 years finally preserved a part of her soul. As long as he slowly recovered, he would be able to get better. Big sister, big sister. The little monkey circled around Mo. When it saw him raise his head and look at it blankly, it couldn't help but cry out anxiously. Little monkey. Arbor brought the little brat to his side and patted her head. Don't worry. Sister's soul is drifting around. She must be quite stupid right now. It's normal that I don't know you. After all, this half of her god's soul shouldn't have the memories of the host's soul. Even if it does, it's just some memory fragments. Little sister, what should we do? We can only wait. Arbor sighed and patted the child's shoulder. In the future, if he could concoct some medicinal pills that could stabilize one's divine soul, they should be of help to Emochin. Wait, hearing this word, the little monkey's body trembled slightly. Young female benefactor, waiting is not in vain. You should be glad that there's someone in this world who's worth waiting for. The little monk had stepped out of the star field at some point in time. At this moment, he was holding a box with both hands and lecturing with a solemn expression. Stinky monk, you talk nonsense all day long. She was already several hundred years old, yet she had to lecture this chubby little monk every other day. It was infuriating. Young female benefactor, she hit this little monk's head. The little monk puffed up his chubby cheeks and shouted angrily. Wasn't it normal to get beaten up all day long? Chapter 4955. Arbor lowered her head and glanced at the little monk. She lifted him to the side, giving the little monkey and Mo some space to interact. All right. The little monk who was always talking nonsense would get beaten up no matter where he went. Arbor carried him away. The little monkey and Mo definitely had a lot of things they wanted to talk about. The rest of the people shouldn't disturb them. Benefactress. The little monk puffed up his cheeks and tried to look up. He tilted his head and looked at her. You seem to have gained weight again. Benefactress really wants to beat you up right now. Arbor glared at the little monk. Shut up. You don't need to speak right now. The little monk smacked his lips and snorted. Then when will this little monk need to speak? The people in the star domain were all very strange. Every time the little monk opened his mouth, they would either tell him to shut up or find him naggy. Actually, he wasn't naggy at all. He just spoke a few more words. Arbor took out a carrot from her inner world and stuffed it into the little monk's mouth. Is it sweet? It's sweet. The little monk took the carrot and took a bite out of it. Kong Kong, have you made any progress in controlling the fire spirit recently? Kong Kong nodded. The small fireball has already become a large fireball. Arbor lowered her head and glanced at him. She was surprised. Kong Kong, your cultivation level has increased. Amitba. This little monk hasn't worked hard enough. The little monk puffed up his cheeks and took a few bites of the carrot. This little rascal was only 5 years old, but his cultivation level had already surpassed most people. Looking at his small arms and legs, it was hard to imagine that he was already a level 13 spiritual master. His innate talent seemed to be even better than hers, if not better. Benefactress. The little fatty said in a childish voice. You haven't come to see this little monk for so long. This little monk misses you very much. Arbor wanted to laugh. She reached out and poked his white and tender double chin. Do you miss me or the peaches I gave you? The little monk thought for 3 seconds and nodded heavily. But he missed the peaches mainly. Liar. Arbor flicked him on the forehead. Liar. The little monk hurriedly covered his forehead with his hand. No, I'm not lying to you. All right. Arbor carried him to the door of the spirit artifact cabin. Sister is going to the surface of the sea now. Are you going to enter the star field or don't enter the star field, don't enter the star field? The little monk repeatedly protested. He had been cooped up in the star field all day long. If he wasn't cultivating, he would be eating melons. It wasn't easy for him to get some fresh air. He had to stay by the female benefactor's side. Benefactress, this little monk has recently recited a new scripture to calm the mind. Do you want to hear it? Arbor looked at him silently. Not for now. That's really a pity. The small monk curled his lips and said, This little monk has already memorized it thoroughly. I can even recite it backwards. Originally, I thought that since Benefactress has a strong evil aura, I could read it to Benefactress when I have nothing to do. Arbor, thank you to your whole family. Since Benefactress Oh. Arbor pressed the little monk's nagging mouth with one hand and quickly jumped down from the spirit artifact cabin with him. Her ears suddenly became much quieter, and Arbor let out a slight sigh of relief. Little tree, bring Kong Kong back to the star field. The little monk hugged her arm. Oh, little tree waved its branches, and its voice rippled. Forget it, mistress. Chapter 4956. When you weren't here, Kong Kong talked about you every day. I missed you so much. Most importantly, it was very annoying to talk about it all day long. Now that the star field finally had some peace, it was better to let Master Silver worry about it alone. Master Silver, if there's nothing else, we'll go back first. While you were away, many people went into seclusion. Who are you looking for? I'll call them for you. Arbor was expressionless. I'm looking for Xiao Xiao. I'll find her myself later. She had been on the sea for so long. Where on earth did little Tai Sui go? He was nowhere to be seen in the Mystic Realm or in the Forgetting River. Could it be he went back to the Imperial capital alone? Now that the star field was open, the poison-tailed butterfly queen could send out a large number of little butterflies to search for him. Arbor was a bit worried. Little Tai Sui had been missing for long enough. He was a child a child who looked no more than 10 years old. It was very worrying to see him drifting on the sea alone for so long. Master Silver, do you have any other instructions? Bring out those 3 little puppies for me. Little Tree said expressionlessly, I can't. Master Silver, go catch them yourself. Those 3 idiots had now openly settled down on the main planet. How infuriating! Master Silver wasn't here, but they could run to the main planet on their own. Even Little Tree Chio didn't have such an honor. It couldn't even enter the main planet. Just thinking about it was infuriating. Master Silver, this time, You have to give me permission to let Chiochio go to the main planet too. Chiochio was despised by those 3 silly puppies. Arbor nodded. Got it. After Little Tree left with Dian Dian, Arbor first communicated with the poison-tailed butterfly Queen Xiao Xiao with his divine sense. Xiao Xiao immediately patted her chest and promised that she would bring the little butterflies back to find little Tai Sui. She hadn't come out for a long time. Leading tens of thousands of butterflies, she flew out of the star field and scattered on the sea. Xiao Mu looked at their thin and small bodies and was quite worried for them. The sea wind was so strong. He didn't know if he could find little Tai Sui. He hoped that they were all safe. Benefactress, this little monk is not full yet. Arbor subconsciously took out a carrot and stuffed it into the little monk's mouth. Crunch. The small monk bit down, producing a crisp sound. Why don't I see Benefactress's husband? It was rare for that big bad guy to not appear by Benefactress's side for such a long time. If he was here, he would definitely not allow the Benefactress to hug him. He would definitely take the little monk with one hand and swing him back and forth like he was a bag of oranges. He's at the bottom of the cave. Fell in? The little monk cried out in his childish voice. With a face full of disbelief, he said, I didn't expect him to be so stupid. You're already so old, yet you don't even look where you're going. Arbor's mouth twitched. He suddenly felt like he didn't know what to say. Will he climb up? Wow, it's a little dark down there. I can't see what's down there. The little monk said again and looked into the bottomless abyss. Arbor sighed. It's been a long time. The little monk followed suit and sighed. He raised his hand and patted Arbor's back. Benefactress, don't worry. Although he's stupid, his luck is pretty good. He'll definitely climb up by himself. Someone's coming up. Benefactress. The little monk suddenly stretched out his chubby hand and pointed at the bottomless abyss. A beam of light suddenly leaped out of the cave. Following that, a shadow guard jumped up and shouted, Quick, help lift him up. Chapter 4957. Arbor hastily stepped forward with the little monk in her arms. What is it? Jojo. Duan Yu leaped up and landed in front of her. He stared at the little monk and exclaimed, This imp came out. The little monk chewed on a carrot and asked in a childish voice, Benefactress's Duan Yu, you also fell into the hole? Duan Yu's mouth twitched as he looked at him, both amused and exasperated. He then turned to look at Arbor. Jojo, has your star domain recovered? Arbor nodded repeatedly. Dun Yu, before she could finish speaking, her gaze suddenly landed behind him, and she exclaimed, Xiao? Little Tai Sui. Little Tai Sui's eyes were tightly shut, and his small face was ghastly pale as he was gently carried out of the hole by 2 hidden guards. Arbor quickly stuffed the little monk in her hands into Duan Yu's hands before floating forward. She took out a needle pouch from her sleeve and pricked little Tai Sui twice. When the frost entered his body, his blood was about to solidify. Arbor's expression instantly turned extremely grave. It was truly strange that little Tai Sui would be frozen to this extent by the frost that entered his body despite being at the transcendent divine realm. Duan Yu quietly said, When I cut open the ice, I saw him fall into a hole in the ice. From the looks of it, it should have been quite a while. Arbor clenched her fists as she mused. Could it be that this guy searched for her on the sea and mistakenly thought that she jumped into the abyss to find Emolien? So he also jumped into the abyss of the sacrificial sea to find her? So the two of them didn't meet near the Pond Lotus sacred realm at all? You mean to say that this layer of ice only broke recently? At least, it was only after little Tai Sui jumped down to find her that the ice layer completely collapsed and blocked the passage. Duan Yu nodded. In reality, he deeply suspected that the reason this abyss collapsed was probably related to Emolien's wanton destruction inside. However, to prevent Jojo from overthinking things, he didn't mention this in front of Jojo. I need to use a strong medicinal pill to expel the frost inside his body, Arbor said seriously. It will probably take half a day. Duan Yu hummed in response before turning to Xiao Yi and ordering, Send them to the flying spirit artifact. Benefactresses Duan Yu, don't lift this young monk. The little monk protested in a timely manner. Everyone quickly leaped onto their air transportation spirit tools, and Arbor instructed his subordinates to lay down the little Tai Sui before administering acupuncture treatments. Little Monkey and Mo, who had just finished catching up with each other, ran over. Although it was called reminiscing, it was actually just Little Monkey rambling on by himself. Moze listened in a daze. Even after listening for a long time, he still wasn't able to give Little Monkey a response. But even so, the Little Monkey was already very happy. After all, his sister was now standing in front of him, alive. Although it was only a half-soul body, it was still better than nothing. Mo saw Arbor performing acupuncture and circled around Arbor as usual to watch. Arbor only took half an incense stick to burn from the acupuncture to the pill. After feeding it the strong medicinal pill, Arbor touched Little Tai Sui's icy forehead and muttered to himself, "There's finally some warmth." He just needed to wait for Little Tai Sui to slowly wake up. At that time, he could ask him about the situation. Arbor was filled with anticipation as he sat down next to the unconscious Little Tai Sui. When Moze saw this, she also obediently sat down next to Arbor. Little Monkey then sat down next to Moze, sitting close to her. After Duan Yu finished speaking with the hidden guard, he turned around and saw 3 heads of different sizes sitting in a row. Duan Yu couldn't help laughing on the inside. Chapter 4958. Duan Yu's lips involuntarily curled into a faint smile. "Jojo, how is Little Tai Sui?" "He's about to wake up. Looking at this progress, we should be able to open up the underground passage in 2 days. Jojo, don't be anxious." Arbor looked up at Duan Yu, his eyes brightening. Mo and the Little Monkey also raised their heads one after another, their expressions identical as they looked at Duan Yu. Duan Yu was speechless. These two's movements were simply in sync with Jojo's. It was a bit comical for the 3 little fellows to stick together in a row. However, it was rare for Jojo to find someone he could chat with so well. Of course, most of the time, Jojo and Mo were together in silence, so they basically didn't speak much. However, the atmosphere between the two of them was quite harmonious. Jojo was finally a child with friends. Back then, she had said, "I don't have any friends," for a long time. When he thought of this, the smile on Duan Yu's face deepened. Arbor glanced at him and was about to poke him when he noticed Little Tai Sui's finger twitching. Arbor quickly propped up his head and placed a soft pillow under his head. Little Tai Sui slowly opened his large, beautiful eyes and stared blankly at Arbor, his gaze drifting erratically. Arbor quickly waved his hand in front of him and asked seriously, "How many fingers is this?" Little Tai Sui grumpily grabbed her small hand and exclaimed weakly, "Where did you run off to?" Arbor instantly felt guilty. "Little Tai Sui, didn't we agree to meet at the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm? Why did you run off to the undersea abyss?" At the mention of this, Little Tai Sui flared up. "When did we agree to meet? I mentioned the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm back then, but you didn't say you would definitely go. I kept looking for you on the sea, but I couldn't find you at first, so I went to the undersea abyss entrance to wait for you. I thought that with your personality, you would definitely go to the undersea abyss entrance to wait for Lien every day. Who knew you wouldn't follow the routine?" At this point, Little Tai Sui couldn't help but roll its eyes. I thought to myself, could it be that you jumped into the abyss on a whim? Arbor, Duan Yu interjected in amusement. "So you dug your own grave and jumped down to find Jojo? What are you thinking? Is Jojo that stupid?" Jojo nodded and stared at the Little Tai Sui in disbelief. This child was so stupid. Little Tai Sui was so humiliated that he flew into a rage. He coughed, struggled to get up, and immediately changed the subject. "Do you know? I encountered the super sacred beast, Primal Chaos." This guy, when he talked about the things he had done, he immediately skipped the topic. "When I saw this super holy beast, it was rolling back and forth in the depths of the ocean as if it was constipated. It stomped its legs and roared, crushing the entire country below it into pieces. I didn't even have time to see what happened before he spat out a mouthful of cold air. Actually, I could still move at that time, but unfortunately, that icy mist was extremely tyrannical and froze me to death in a matter of minutes." Primal Chaos? Duan Yu's expression instantly turned grave. In the undersea abyss? Yes. There's a natural formation in the depths of the undersea abyss. Little Tai Sui took a deep breath and said, "When I rushed there, I didn't see a single person. It was just that super holy beast that spat ice water all over my face. When I fled upwards in a panic, I was struck by its tail, and I lost consciousness at that time." Chapter 49-59. I didn't see you until I woke up just now. During this time, the thing that left the deepest impression on little Tai Sui was that six-legged, four-winged chaos ferocious beast that was as red as fire. Six-legged, four-winged, and as red as fire. Its entire body was enveloped in a layer of blazing light. But did you know? This chaos ferocious beast doesn't spit fire when it opens its mouth. Instead, it spat out a large mouthful of ice mist that froze him stiff. If he hadn't cleverly mobilized all the sacred energy in his body to swiftly thaw and stagger away from the scene, he would have probably been smashed into minced meat by the chaos ferocious beast. Even though he escaped quickly, he was still sent flying by the chaos ferocious beast's tail and fell into the ice cavern. He was mostly lucky to be able to preserve his life on this trip. After being sent flying by the chaos ferocious beast's tail, he fell into that ice cavern. Thankfully, the chaos ferocious beast didn't chase after him, which saved his life. Of course, little Tai Sui himself was a bit baffled. Judging from the chaos ferocious beast's appearance at that time, it had clearly gone berserk, so why didn't it chase after him to kill him? Upon hearing little Tai Sui's words, Arbor's heart instantly clenched. Chaos ferocious beast? Could it be that the thing that suddenly interrupted the water ripple illusion was this ferocious beast's doing? Jojo's lotus and rotten peach blossom wouldn't be in any danger, right? Don't let your imagination run wild, Jojo. Duan Yu hastily interrupted her drifting thoughts and turned her small head back with one hand. He looked at this little stoic whose eyes were drifting erratically. It was obvious that her thoughts were a bit chaotic. The more she thought about this and that, the more she thought about it, the more scared she became. It'll be fine. How could a little reptile pose a threat to Emolien's rotten peach blossom? Little Tai Sui secretly rolled his eyes on the side. Little reptile, why don't you freaking find a little reptile the size of a mountain for me to see? Be good and rest first. I promise you, we'll definitely be able to smoothly enter the undersea abyss by tomorrow night at the latest. We'll explore it then. Little Tai Sui pursed his lips again, thinking, what's there to see in the undersea abyss when all that's left are ruins? But when she received Duan Yu's warning gaze, she could only shut her mouth. That night, Arbor didn't enter the star domain to rest. Instead, he crawled into his sleeping bag in the spirit artifact cabin and tossed and turned all night. At noon the next day, after eating a tasteless lunch, Duan Yu indeed brought Xiaoyi and the others upstairs. Jojo. Arbor's eyes lit up. Can we go now? Duan Yu nodded. Come. Arbor turned around and patted Little Monkey's and Mo's heads. Little Monkey, you stay up there with your sister and Little Monk. I'll go down and see what's going on. The Little Monkey nodded obediently. Mo and the Little Monk nodded as well. Benefactress, you should put on a few more defensive shells. That way you'll be safer. This little monk can rest assured that you can go down. Arbor, this little fatty monk was so small, but his words were so eloquent. Arbor expressionlessly waved his hand at the little monk. The little monk also quickly waved his small paws and blinked his large, watery eyes as he watched Arbor go down. He prattled, Benefactress, come back quickly. This little monk will wait for you. Duan Yu, why was this little fatty monk so asking for a beating? The two of them jumped into the undersea abyss one after the other. Arbor instantly felt his vision darken. Soon, their surroundings lit up again. Duan Yu stuffed an illumination pearl into her hand and pulled her along, sliding down the undersea abyss at lightning speed. Chapter 49-60. This place is a bit different from the last time I came in. She remembered that her conscience was very uncomfortable the last time she entered the seabed abyss. Not only did this place have a natural suction force, but it also attacked her conscience. But now, everything no longer existed. It was as if the splitting headache she felt the last time she came in was just her own hallucination. There's a sinkhole below. It was originally an ancient array, but it's been destroyed by humans. Duan Yu led her down and paused before saying, it's especially similar to emollient and rotten peach blossom's violent destruction methods. Arbor's eyes brightened, and she saw a very abrupt prism of ice on the ice wall further down. Previously, this area was completely enveloped by the venerable peach blossom immortal's wood spirit energy. Although Duan Yu and his men had already destroyed it, there were still a few wisps of wood spirit energy drifting back and forth in the air. Arbor followed Duan Yu and entered the ice cave below. This ice cave originally appeared to be endlessly deep, but after the ancient array was destroyed, the space also lost its effectiveness, revealing its original appearance. Arbor and Duan Yu smoothly reached the bottom of the cave and saw piles of white bones covering the ground, extending all the way forward. The two of them floated slightly in the air and floated forward for a distance. When they looked up, they saw a half-collapsed earthen wall. There was a tattered sign hanging in front of the earthen archway. 4 large, crooked words were written on it: Nation of Sin. The handwriting was simply too horrible to look at. It was obvious that it wasn't written by a cultured person. Arbor and Duan Yu looked at each other, bewildered. Duan Yu said, the array is behind a pile of broken earthen walls. I'll bring you over to take a look. The two of them circled around to the back. Sure enough, Arbor saw a collapsed array with many messy totems and pictograms drawn on it. Arbor looked away after a glance. She couldn't understand it anyway, so she just looked at Duan Yu. Duan Yu squatted next to that damaged array and observed it for a while before saying, this should be an isolation and sealing array. This ancient array should be sealing something. Arbor blinked. Now that the array has been destroyed, you mean the thing inside the array ran out? Your Majesty! Xiao Yi quickly walked in front of him and bowed respectfully. There are discoveries below. Jojo! Duan Yu called Sir Jojo, and the two of them followed Xiao Yi around to the back of a broken wall. A huge crater in the shape of a beast collapsed and extended all the way down. From the looks of it, the giant beast had rolled all the way here. Arbor estimated that the beast's body was about 3 meters tall. This shouldn't be the most primitive form of a holy beast. Wu Yi stepped forward and said, Your Majesty, your subordinates speculate that this holy beast has already left the seabed abyss. Duan Yu was startled, and he quickly jumped into the crater created by the giant beast with several hidden guards. They followed the craters of varying depths forward. The terrain became lower and lower until a fault appeared in front of them. Under the fault, the glacier stood tall and shimmering. A layer of blue seawater flowed slowly around the glacier. Wu Yi pointed at the fault and said, Look, Your Majesty. This holy beast should have directly crashed down from here. Arbor stuck her head out to take a look, and half of her body was almost out of the platform. Duan Yu quickly pulled her back and whispered with a frown, Jojo, stay here and don't move. I'll bring people down to take a look. Chapter 4961. Arbor hastily shook her head. I'll also go take a look. Duan Yu naturally wouldn't let her run down and take risks, so he quickly dissuaded her. It'll be quick. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Xiao Mu lowered her head to look at her stomach before reluctantly nodding in agreement. After Duan Yu went down, the little stoic paced back and forth in front of the fault. Xiao Yi was a bit alarmed by this and quickly advised, Crown Princess, don't stand on the edge of that cliff while you're still here. Perhaps that damn fault would suddenly snap. If even a strand of hair on the Crown Princess' head was harmed, who knew how His Majesty would go berserk? Arbor glanced at the ice platform beneath her feet before turning to look at Xiao Yi. She expressionlessly walked to his side and stood still. Does that ancient great sealing array have an array core? Let me see it. Xiao Yi quickly shook his head. There isn't an array core. We've already checked inside and out. There's only an empty hole in the array. There's nothing else. Xiao Mu was puzzled. This is strange. Logically speaking, for such a large ancient matrix to seal something, it must have a corresponding matrix core. While she was muttering to herself, Duan Yu leaped up from below the ice and hurried to her side. It's connected to the sea below. That sacred beast should have entered the sea. Arbor looked at Duan Yu in astonishment and quietly asked, "Then what about Mo Lien and Rotten Peach Blossom? Why are they missing?" "Not only that," Duan Yu said seriously. "Jojo, Xiaoyi, and the others have already searched inside and out. There are many artifacts left behind by the aboriginals here. This means there should have been many people living here. Then where are they now?" Duan Yu looked down at Arbor. Arbor only felt her heart beating abnormally fast. That little heart seemed about to jump out of her chest. Where could they be? Duan Yu's heart clenched when he saw her inexplicably nervous expression and the abnormally pale complexion on her petite face. He hurriedly said, "They probably fought with that sacred beast all the way out?" Saying this was indeed very far-fetched. After all, it seemed that only the footprints of the chaos behemoth could be found in the pits of different depths. There was no trace of Mo Lien and the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. "Don't worry, Jojo. Let's keep looking. We'll find that guy eventually." Duan Yu couldn't bear to see the little stoic on the verge of tears the most, so he repeatedly pacified her, "Let's summon more people and search every nook and cranny of the River of Forgetfulness. We'll definitely find him." The little stoic glanced at him listlessly. "But you have to return to Sangzhou." Duan Yu was taken aback, and he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Although this little fellow usually doesn't say anything, she sees everything clearly. Duan Yu was indeed busy with affairs in Sangzhou. He had already received more than a dozen letters from Prime Minister Wu, earnestly requesting him to quickly return to Sangzhou. "In any case, I've already come out." Duan Yu winked at the little fellow. "Who cares? I'll stay for a while longer before going back." Sir Jojo peered at him and said solemnly, "Duan Yu, thank you." Duan Yu sighed softly. "There's no need for thanks between us." Arbor pondered before saying, "We'll set a deadline of 5 days. If we still can't find him, I won't look anymore." Sir Jojo was angry. Humph. Chapter 4962. "Jojo, there's no need to be in such a hurry." Duan Yu hastily persuaded, "Wait 2 more days. I'll transfer more people over to search." "No, it's settled then." Arbor turned around and pattered away after saying this. Her little stoic face was puffed up with anger, and she couldn't muster the energy to speak for a long time. Duan Yu couldn't help but feel helpless. He naturally understood Jojo's thoughts. The little fellow didn't want to make things difficult for him. After all, with his current status, his actions during this period of time were truly too willful and reckless for him to directly abandon the state affairs and wander back and forth in the River of Forgetfulness. "Jojo!" Duan Yu quickly chased after her. "Then let's return to Sangzhou together after a while. I won't leave until you agree." He naturally wouldn't be reassured to leave her all alone on this boundless sea again. Moreover, she was pregnant now, so she needed to rest and recuperate even more. The little fellow had truly suffered too much during this period of time. Look at her little face, it had lost a whole size. He must take her back and properly nourish her. She probably wouldn't be able to recover in 2 or 3 days. Truly pitiful. "Don't worry, leave more people here. As long as there's news about that swindler, they'll definitely notify us immediately." Arbor pursed her lips and didn't say anything. In reality, she was still planning to have Duan Yu return first to handle matters while she stayed behind to continue waiting for Jojo's lotus. However, she also understood that Duan Yu absolutely wouldn't approve of her plan. "He's not in the seabed abyss right now, and I don't know where he's fighting with that sacred beast. If we can't receive his message, it's not a good idea to just sit and wait for him." Duan Yu continued to persuade, "Listen to me, don't be exposed to the wind and sun on the sea all the time. We'll return to the city first. When we receive definite news, you can use the transportation talisman matrix to send it. Isn't it just a matter of minutes?" Arbor couldn't resist pursing her lips. She looked back at Duan Yu, who kept nagging behind her, and couldn't resist rolling her eyes. "Why are you acting like you're possessed by a little monk? How can it be that simple? There's a limit to the distance of a directional transportation talisman matrix. However, as long as they grasped the general direction, they could still reach their destination after a few more teleportations." Thinking about it this way, Duan Yu's words were quite reasonable. What's that thing floating over there? Duan Yu and Arbor had just leaped out of the underwater abyss one after the other when they heard the hidden guard shout. The two of them looked towards the surface of the sea and saw a person being swept up in the sea. He was struggling to stretch out an arm and flop on the water surface with great effort. Arbor took a glance and retracted his gaze. There was not much reaction on his face. Duan Yu, on the other hand, raised his brows slightly as he stood with Jojo at the entrance of the undersea abyss. They also looked in that direction from a considerable distance away. They saw that the unknown person was being swept up and down by the seawater, floating towards them. When they got closer, the two of them could see clearly that it was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 50s. Arbor sniffed. It's the aura of talisman power. Oh? This person is a great talisman master? They must have used something like a teleportation array. He was probably tricked by the non-directional transportation talisman matrix and didn't expect to land in the river of forgetfulness, so he directly fell into the sea. Duan Yu, this troublemaker, nodded and said, "Let's capture him first." Arbor, are you serious about doing this? We don't know who he is either. Let's interrogate him first. Chapter 4963. Duan Yu pulled Arbor onto the small boat that Xiaoyi and the others had prepared in advance and ordered aloofly, "Go, capture him first and interrogate him thoroughly." "Yes, Your Majesty." After receiving the order, Xiaoyi nimbly led his men forward and pulled out a net used for fishing, dragging the man out of the sea. They were very nimble and swiftly dragged the man to the bow of the boat. One of them flipped the middle-aged man over while the other used a spirit-binding rope to tie his hands behind his back. Xiaoyi heavily slapped that man's back. After a sound, the man coughed and spat out 2 mouthfuls of water before turning to look at Xiaoyi and the others in a daze. Duan Yu glanced over, and Xiaoyi immediately pulled out a dagger from his sleeve and pressed it against the man's neck. He asked in a chilly tone, "Speak, who are you and where did you teleport over from, punk?" A trace of panic flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes, and he hastily cried out, "Heroes and warriors, spare me, spare me. This lowly one is a merchant who encountered a robbery while sailing. He's lying." Arbor dryly interrupted the man's explanation. On the side, Wu didn't say anything and smashed a fist into that man's chin. The middle-aged man grunted, and Wu Yi's stern reprimand rang in his ears, "Speak honestly." A cough, cough, cough. The middle-aged man repeatedly coughed and panted as he looked at the people before him in horror. "You guys? Who are you? What do you want to do? You used a transportation talisman matrix, so talisman energy is still flowing around your body. How could you be a simple merchant?" This person was full of flaws, yet he still wanted to pretend? Although the middle-aged man's expression remained calm, his black pupils contracted slightly. From the little girl's voice, she didn't seem old, but her eyesight was astonishing. She actually saw that he used a transportation talisman matrix with a glance. The middle-aged man's arms were tied behind his back as he knelt there, so he could only try his best to turn his head to see which expert little girl exposed his origins. "Behave yourself." Wu Yi gave him a push. That middle-aged man took advantage of this to lie on his side. He rolled his eyes and strenuously turned his head to look in Xiao Mu's direction. Although he was already trying very hard to control his facial expression, Xiao Mu still saw a trace of shock and astonishment in the depths of his stormy eyes. Xiao Mu exclaimed in surprise and walked forward a few steps. The middle-aged man crawled backward as if he had seen a monster attacking him. His eyes hurriedly avoided Arbor's sharp gaze, not daring to look him in the eye. How rare! Arbor thought to himself. She had clearly never met this middle-aged man before, so why did he reveal such a guilty expression when he saw her? She was secretly curious and couldn't help but take a few steps closer to the middle-aged man. Duan Yu quickly chased after her and pulled her to his side. He warned with knitted brows, "This person's origins are unknown. Be careful." Arbor nodded and exclaimed in surprise. He tilted his head to look at that middle-aged man before turning to Duan Yu and saying, "Very strange." "What?" "His face is a bit strange." The middle-aged man's heart was about to jump out of his chest. His panicked expression revealed the fear in his heart at this moment. Arbor was curious and took a few steps closer to him. A small glass bottle suddenly slid out of her sleeve. Chapter 4964. The brownish-yellow color of the bottle shimmered under the faint sunlight, and it was very beautiful. The middle-aged man shuddered for no reason, and he couldn't help but tense up. You, what do you want to do?" he shouted harshly. At this moment, even he himself didn't notice that his voice was trembling slightly. He was truly extremely afraid of this little great ant in front of him. Seeing this little great ant walking closer and closer to him, the middle-aged man's heart couldn't stop pounding violently. He kept feeling that something bad was about to happen. But the middle-aged man couldn't tell what it wasn't until he saw this little great ant open the glass bottle's cork that a faint, strange fragrance wafted into his nose. The middle-aged man's body stiffened, and he couldn't stop shuddering. He was very familiar with this medicinal fragrance. He was too familiar with it. This was impossible. How could this little great ant know the usage of this medicine? Impossible. This was the one and only antidote to the directional shape-shifting medicinal liquid in the world. As long as he consumed it, he would immediately revert to his original form and reveal his original appearance. The middle-aged man was already panicking. He didn't expect that all the unlucky things would be piled together and happen one after another, damn it. "Jojo." Duan Yu pulled her back and looked down at the small glass bottle in her hand. "What is this?" "Feed it to him. Feed it all down." Arbor disdainfully glanced at the ghastly pale middle-aged man on the ground before stuffing the glass bottle to Duan Yu. On the side, Xiaoyi quickly walked over and reached out to take the bottle from His Majesty. She walked up to the middle-aged man and looked at him with a strange expression. What was wrong with this middle-aged man? His expression looked like he had eaten feces. His face was yellow and ugly. Wasn't it just a bottle of medicinal liquid? Look at how frightened he was. Could it be that the little crown princess's bottle of medicinal liquid was extraordinary in some way? Go away. Don't grab me." The middle-aged man bellowed with reddened eyes under the suppression of several hidden guards. Duan Yu narrowed his eyes and sized up the man before him. He muttered to himself, "Have I seen him somewhere before? You know this ugly freak?" Sir Jojo glanced at Duan Yu in disdain. Duan Yu couldn't help curling his lips in amusement. "I keep feeling that you're a bit familiar, but I can't remember where I've seen you before." His memory wasn't bad. If he had seen someone once, he should be able to remember them. However, he couldn't recall the face of the middle-aged man in front of him, but he felt that he was vaguely familiar. She disguised herself. "Ugly freak," Arbor said coldly. He took a kind of directional transformation liquid that can completely change his appearance in 3 days. No one knows about it. Duan Yu abruptly reacted, and his handsome face promptly chilled. Directional transformation medicinal fluid? He knew why the middle-aged man in front of him felt so familiar. Because he had seen this person before. At this very moment, the middle-aged man who had been forced to drink a small bottle of antidote was undergoing a complete transformation. Her originally flat body was gradually becoming curvaceous. She was still wearing the gray robe of an ordinary merchant, but her exquisite figure was wrapped in it. Even though she was wearing the same gray robe, she looked much better now. She sprawled on the ground, her beautiful eyes filled with resentment and indignation. Chapter 4965. With a complicated expression, the woman coldly swept her gaze towards Arbor. "You are the state of Doruo's third state preceptor, Shintu Jing, right?" Duan Yu exposed the incomer's identity with a chilling glint in his eyes. "Long time no see. How have you been, state preceptor?" Arbor detected a strong hostility in Duan Yu's voice. The little stoic immediately turned her head and sized up state preceptor Shintu. The state of Doruo? She seemed to have never heard of it. Also, this woman looked to be around 26 or 27 years old. Her rosy cheeks were tinged with spring, and her dark brows were deeply furrowed. She looked to be an out-and-out beauty. She didn't expect her to be some state preceptor. Shinta-Jing glared hatefully at the man and woman in front of her before her gaze finally landed on Arbor's face. She shouted coldly, "Even if you kill me, you can't stop the implementation of Lily-er's plan." Arbor was dumbfounded. What the hell? What Lily-er's plan? Arbor turned to look at the enraged Duan Yu in confusion. Judging from Duan Yu's reaction, he seemed to know about the transformation medicinal liquid and Lily-er's plan. "You're courting death." Duan Yu's icy voice reached Shinta-Jing's ears, and the latter shuddered abruptly. However, this woman insisted on suffering for her pride. She stiffly stiffened her neck and revealed a fearless expression. "Kill me or torture me as you wish. But I just want to tell you too that Lily-er's plan won't be interrupted because of my death." Duan Yu raised his hand, and a silvery white flame scuttled out from his fingers. Just as it was about to land on Shinta-Jing, Arbor quickly grabbed him and asked, "What's going on?" Jojo actually didn't understand. What Lily-er's plan? This strange conversation between the two of them made her feel as if she was being kept in the dark about something. Nothing. Duan Yu took a deep breath, trying his best to suppress the surging rage in his eyes. There must be something. Arbor tugged at his sleeve, unwilling to give up. "Hurry and tell me." "You're not allowed to deceive Jojo." Duan Yu glanced at her and saw that the little stoic was staring fixedly at him with a pair of round eyes. He couldn't help but find it amusing. "Okay, I'll tell you, but don't be angry." Arbor nodded. "Go ahead. I won't be angry. You know, my mental endurance is pretty good." A moment later, Duan Yu told Sir Jojo everything he knew about Lily-er's incident. Jojo's expressionless face was taut. Her eyes were burning with rage. Without another word, she pulled out a black ferrule and smashed it down towards Shinta-Jing's head. Bang! Bang bang! Xiaoyi and the other secret guards couldn't help but cover their faces with their hands and laugh in their hearts. Oh my god, this is the crown princess with good psychological endurance. Without another word, the little crown princess smacked Shinta-Jing's head with her ferrule until it bled. Her bright eyes were tainted with a trace of fury, and she kicked Shinta-Jing from time to time as she fought. These people actually dared to backstab her and imitate her? They must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall to create a large batch of imitations of Sir Jojo. Unlike the 100 or so golem jajas that old fellow Tian Tuzi created, they were cute and harmless and could even command them to work at will. These lilies were all things that had been forcibly distorted and created by someone. According to Duan Yu, once Lily-er completely died, the puppeteer behind her would use a secret puppet technique to continue controlling her. Arbor pulled up Shinta-Jing, who was sprawled on the ground. Chapter 4966. Just thinking about it made her feel extremely disgusted. These people from the state of Daluo who indulged in the wildest fantasies actually concocted a scheme where one person substituted the other for the other. Unfortunately, their intelligence didn't seem to be enough. Otherwise, this state preceptor Shinta wouldn't have foolishly bumped into her, the person in question. No wonder she looked constipated and guilty when she saw her just now. It turned out that she discovered the subject of the experiment had appeared in front of her. How could Shinta-Jing know that the little stoic was silently cursing? If she knew, she would definitely cry out for injustice. She was simply unlucky to the extreme during this period of time. Speaking of which, her unlucky experience started when she found Songzhou's ruler. First, she destroyed one of her doppelgangers in the hands of Songzhou's ruler. Then, Ming Province's crown prince closed the door and beat her like a dog, hunting her down in the entire city. Shinta-Jing was utterly helpless and could only use the fraudulent transportation talisman matrix to transport herself out of the sealed Great Yong City. In the end, something even more fraudulent happened. The transportation talisman matrix almost failed. She didn't know what method that Ming Province's crown prince used. After several failed transmissions, she was so desperate that she used up all the transportation talisman matrices around her. And so something even more ridiculous was about to happen. This non-directional transportation talisman matrix transported her to the Sea of Forgetfulness. As soon as she came out of the transportation talisman matrix, she encountered a large corpse-devouring shark. After a desperate struggle, Shuntu-jing, who barely escaped death, fainted in the sea of forgetfulness due to exhaustion. Thus she floated up and down, floated to the subject of the experiment, Arbor. She didn't know if she should say that her luck was good or bad. She had been unconscious for more than 2 hours. Although she had already used a defensive talisman matrix on herself before she fainted, fortunately, she still didn't encounter that corpse-devouring shark. Otherwise, who knew if she would be in the shark's stomach right now? Arbor gazed coldly at third state preceptor Shuntu-jing in front of him. This beautiful state preceptor of the state of Daluo was currently staring back at him stubbornly with a stiff neck. Arbor felt incredibly vexed when he saw her and directly slapped her face with his ferrule. He shouted coldly, "Keep looking and I'll gouge out your eyeballs." Shuntu-jing let out a miserable cry. At this moment, her face was already incomparably wretched. After going through the little stoic's rough beating, what bullshit beautiful preceptor her face was completely different from the word beauty. Speak. Where are the rest of those disgusting imitations that you guys collected? Upon hearing Duan Yu's words, these replicas did not seem to have the slightest intention of refuting. Instead, they were very proud and even quite happy to become such a substitute. Wherever that scumbag went, he would be a scumbag. Arbor pulled Shuntu-jing up and grabbed her by the neck. "Don't think I'll look up to you if you don't say anything. That won't work on me." Arbor coldly said, "Search her soul. My knockoff tower of punishment will allow her to slowly enjoy the rest of her life." Arbor spoke word by word in a leisurely manner. However, Shuntu-jing could not help but tremble all over as she looked at her in terror. In reality, she didn't understand what Arbor meant by the knockoff tower of punishment, but she just couldn't help being abnormally alarmed. It's useless even if you search my soul. Once my soul suffers from external pressure, it'll become an autonomous soul and explode. So you won't be able to obtain any useful information. Duan Yu raised his hand to suppress her. Then explode. Chapter 4967. Shuntu-jing's eyes widened in horror, and she turned to Duan Yu in shock. This man actually sentenced her, Shuntu-jing, to death without a second word? No, you can't search my soul. Please stop. Shuntu-jing couldn't resist begging for mercy. I can say anything. I will say everything I know. There are many things that can't be learned through a soul search. Duan Yu pressed his hand on Shuntu-jing's head and asked apathetically, "Oh? There are things that can't be learned through a soul search?" "I don't dare to deceive your excellency." Shuntu-jing hastily shouted. This one's divine sense was once blocked by a defensive barrier set up by the state preceptor. Although it won't cause a soul explosion, but once that defensive barrier detects an external force invading my conscious, it will directly destroy my consciousness. At this point, Shuntu-jing couldn't help but shudder violently. Before your excellency completes the soul search, I will become an idiot. You won't be able to obtain any useful information. This was truly a bit interesting. Duan Yu swept an icy glance at Shuntu-jing and slowly put his hand down. He said with a smile, "I'll believe you for the time being. Tell me everything you know." Shuntu-jing hastily exhaled deeply and nodded repeatedly. "I don't dare to deceive your excellency. This Lily project has already been in operation for more than half a year. Lily 0 is the most perfect imitation that the state preceptor created." At this point, Shuntu-jing couldn't help but glance at the young crown princess with a complicated expression. Seeing the latter's extremely indifferent expression, Shuntu-jing sighed and said, "I originally thought that Lily 0 was truly a flawless creation. Who knew after seeing the crown princess with my own eyes? Only then did I realize that no one in this world could possibly replace you. No one would be able to keep up with this #1 paralyzed face of yours. As you know, Your Majesty, Lily 9 has already been personally executed by you. As for Lily 5, she was also executed by the Crown Prince of Ming Province in Great Yong City. The remaining lilies, except for 0, should all be in the Pingjin Prairie's territory of the Kingdom of Daluo. Didn't His Majesty already send people to clean them up? Shinta-jing stole a glance at Duan Yu before taking a deep breath and saying, "That perfect work of art, Lily, or number 0, reportedly also came to the River of Forgetfulness a while ago. Second State Preceptor Shenange brought her along with him. As for where they are going, I truly don't know the specifics. The surroundings of the state of Luo's territory are all man-eating black swamps. How did you pass through these black swamps?" Duan Yu asked coldly. Shinta-jing answered honestly. "Our tribe has a large mechanical turtle that can pass through the black swamp unimpeded. Even if an ordinary person were to use a defensive shield, it would be very difficult for them to stay in the black swamp for more than an hour without being disturbed by the poison bugs and poison ants." Arbor's eyes lit up. He stroked his slightly warm abdomen and asked, "Is it fun?" Strangely, while Sir Jojo was interested, he could feel that Baby Mo seemed to be interested in this mechanical turtle as well. This must be the connection between mother and son. Sir Jojo thought, if Jojo's Lotus knew about this, she would definitely be jealous. Lily, or number 0 came to the River of Forgetfulness? Duan Yu's lips were tinged with an extremely faint sneer. Still not giving up on finding a partner? Chapter 4968. What? This time, the one you want to collaborate with is the current master of the Forgetful River tribe? That demonic cult master Ding Yun? Shinta-jing shook her head frantically and hastily said, "I don't know. I truly don't know where Second State Preceptor Shenange will take Lily or number 0 to." "Your Majesty, please judge clearly," Shinta-jing said in a fluster. "This humble one's every word is the truth. I have absolutely no intention of deceiving your Majesty." She had only interacted with Duan Yu once. But this time, she had buried one of her clones, and even Lily, or number 9, was completely destroyed. She shouldn't continue courting death in front of such a vicious and merciless person. Otherwise she would probably die without a burial ground. Shinta-jing took a deep breath and did her best to look at Arbor and Duan Yu with eyes full of sincerity. Arbor swept her a glance. "Throw her into the knockoff pagoda of punishments." Duan Yu's mouth twitched, and he turned back to secretly glance at the little stoic. Even when the little stoic was angry, she was still a bit adorable, especially when she kept talking about the knockoff pagoda of punishments. 2 slender tree branches poked out from under her sleeves and coiled around the horrified Shinta-jing's arm. I really have to say everything. I already told you everything I know. What else do you want?" Shinta-jing shrieked in terror. I swear, I dare to swear an unbreakable heavenly Tao blood oath. Everything I said is true. Absolutely not a single word of falsehood." Arbor expressionlessly glanced at Shinta-jing and allowed the sapling Qiuqiu to drag her into the knockoff pagoda of punishments. Qiuqiu called out crisply, Master, can you not say knockoff next time?" Although their pagoda of punishments was indeed a knockoff, it was fine as long as it was easy to use. The authentic pagoda of punishments has 17 floors, but yours has 12 floors. If you don't make a knockoff, who will? Arbor pursed his lips and muttered softly. Master, Qiuqiu's voice reverberated in her ears. "They can also strengthen the Tower of Punishment and make it taller. It can be repaired to the height of 17 floors. Don't waste your energy. A replica would always be a replica no matter how much it was repaired. It would never become the real Tower of Punishment." Qiuqiu angrily threw Shinta-jing into the first level of the knockoff Tower of Punishment. Shinta-jing had just entered when she felt her entire body being pulled over uncontrollably by a force. She immediately let out a shriek. Suddenly, several iron chains fell from above her head and bound her tightly. "Jojo, you think she's lying?" Duan Yu asked in confusion. Arbor shook his head. "I don't think he's lying. Whether a person was telling the truth or not, one could tell by looking at her eyes and subtle expressions. Just now, Shinta-jing had dared to look back at her while speaking, and she hadn't spoken slowly either. She didn't seem to be thinking as she spoke. Basically, as she had said, she would tell him everything she knew. The corner of Duan Yu's eyes silently twitched. He coughed lightly and asked, Then why did you drag her into the Tower of Punishment? Oh, that tower has been empty for a while, and no one can throw it in. Let her try. Duan Yu was speechless. It seemed like this Shintajing was merely an unlucky person trying out the tower. Sir Jojo didn't expect him to remember that there was such a character in the Tower of Punishment after throwing her in now. Chapter 4969. Duan Yu didn't want to say anything more about this unlucky Shintajing. But since this was Sir Jojo's decision, Duan Yu naturally supported it to the end. Let's see if we can dig out any useful information from this Shintajing, Arbor said seriously. What the heck is this kingdom of Daluo up to? Arbor said coldly with a frown. I want to make a trip to the Pingjin Prairie and meet that king of the kingdom of Daluo. Duan Yu hastily shook his head. With your current condition, it's not suitable for you to go to a place like the Pingjin Prairie where the terrain and environment are extremely vile. Arbor thought about it and agreed. She quickly nodded and said, all right, then help me capture their state preceptor and whatnot. She wanted to properly investigate just who dared to be so audacious as to create so many Liliers to trap her. Oh wait, it should be to trap Emolien. Pumph. Jojo's Lien was truly a pig's head. Jojo was about to be drowned in counterfeits, yet he was still busy counting mushrooms in some nook and cranny. Duan Yu nodded while holding back his laughter. He said helplessly, "Okay, I'll listen to you. Obediently return to Tsang province with me in a few days. We'll talk about the rest later. This matter is very fishy and needs to be thoroughly investigated. Look at this little fellow. She was so restless even when she was pregnant. She kept moving around and jumping around all day, which made him a bit flustered." Arbor put on an unperturbed expression and patted his arm. Don't worry, my body is very healthy. What a joke. She was a great pill alchemist. It would be hilarious if she couldn't even take care of her own body. She was most aware of her own body's condition. If it weren't for her little stoic face that was always expressionless, she might have been grinning from ear to ear already. This baby in her belly was very likely to be a peerless oddball. When she was pregnant, she didn't feel anything. She didn't feel sleepy or nauseous. She didn't feel dizzy or hot or anything. He would only give her guidance when he was picky about food. In addition, when he encountered something good, he probably would also give her guidance. For example, when she encountered the light congealing mirror last time, she clearly felt baby's abnormal movements. This little weirdo probably took after his father, Arbor thought. He was a foodie and liked to collect all kinds of good things. In the future, when he grew up, he would not be taken advantage of. He was a shrewd character. As Lady Xiqiao thought about this, her small hand couldn't help but rub her belly. As if he could feel her caress, his stomach started to heat up. Jojo? Duan Yu couldn't resist glancing at her when he saw her in a daze. Xiao Mu coughed lightly and patted her stomach in all seriousness. It's fine. Duan Yu, don't worry for nothing, my body is fine. After eating and sleeping well, he felt as if his entire body was filled with inexhaustible strength. With a single punch, it wouldn't be surprising if he could split mountains and rivers. Who else could be as strong as her when they were pregnant? Jojo-sama was indeed different. Duan Yu curled his lips. Jojo, are you praising yourself in your mind? Who said that? Xiao Mu cast Duan Yu a sidelong glance and harumphed. She then pattered forward with small steps. If you walk any further, you'll fall into the sea. Duan Yu couldn't help but follow from the bow of the ship. I've deployed an extra 1,000 men. We'll search the nearby waters for another 2 days. Arbor turned his head away with a huff. You're the one who's looking for him. Okay, I miss him. Duan Yu sighed helplessly. Chapter 4970. Jojo was truly Tootsundra. Just looking at him gave people a headache. Arbor snuck a glance at Duan Yu and harumphed. All right then, I'll search for him for 2 more days on your account. Duan Yu nodded in exasperation. After searching for so long without any sign of Emolien, the little emperor was unhappy. Of course, it was more likely that he was worried. Don't look at how this little thing's face was stoic and unperturbed. Perhaps her mind was full of twists and turns, simulating all kinds of bad things and secretly worrying herself to death. She really was a silly girl. Did she think that he wouldn't know her thoughts if she didn't say anything? Duan Yu sighed softly and shook his head. I'm not busy. Actually, it's fine to search more. Behind him, Xiaoyi rolled his eyes in exasperation. Left Prime Minister Wu Yong had sent dozens of urgent letters, but His Majesty turned a blind eye to them and said he wasn't busy. Seriously enough. In comparison, the Crown Princess, the little stoic, seemed to be more reliable than His Majesty. At least she set a deadline, unlike His Majesty who was unreliable. For the sake of the divine province's Crown Prince wait. Could it be that His Majesty was so persistent in searching for the divine province's Crown Prince because? Duan Yu turned around and saw Xiaoyi's constipated expression. He was currently looking at him strangely, and his handsome face was a bit red from holding back his words. If you have something to say, just say it. Why are you holding it in? Duan Yu was speechless. Presumably, he didn't have anything to say. He was just helping Prime Minister Wu urge him to hurry back to the capital. Did he have to hold it in like that? Your Majesty, you don't have improper thoughts about the divine province's crown prince, right? After Xiaoyi said this, Wu Yi felt something fly past his eyes. It perfectly rose into the air with a whoosh before landing back into the sea with an extremely dashing bang. Duan Yu pulled back a leg and expressionlessly flicked his sleeve. He pulled over the dumbfounded Jojo and coughed lightly. Ignore him. His brain isn't working well. However, it was as if Arbor had a new train of thought. He looked at Duan Yu strangely before glancing at the hidden guards who were like wooden stakes prodding him. I feel that Xiaoyi is a warrior who dares to speak the truth. Everyone was speechless. You shouldn't have kicked him. Instead, you should have greatly praised him. Arbor said with a straight face. These days, there aren't many people who dare to be so impudent and outspoken in front of their superiors. That's right, people who were impudent and outspoken were basically buried with grass half the height of a person. Duan Yu looked in shock at Sir Jojo, who had leaped onto the air transportation spirit artifact. He turned to ask Wu Yi, who was standing upright beside him, what does Jojo mean by this? It's exactly what your Majesty is thinking. Wu Yi resisted the urge to burst into laughter and said with a serious expression. Duan Yu, Jojo, come back. It's not what you think. Fuck, how could he have any thoughts about Emolien? It was enough for him to see that guy. 2 days later, Duan Yu's group rode the air transportation spirit artifact in the direction of Tsang province. Sir Jojo couldn't conceal the disappointment on his face, but he tried his best to restrain himself and not show it. No matter how the eloquent little servants tried to coax him into talking, Jojo was dispirited. An hour after the group left, the tranquil seawater suddenly seemed to be boiling, and a whirlpool started to swirl from the bottom. Crash! After a loud sound, a huge wave rolled down and almost overturned a merchant ship that was coming towards them. Chapter 4971. Ah! Someone on the boat suddenly screamed. A young woman, who was sitting at the bow of the boat and sipping tea, couldn't help but scream. She was just sitting there, admiring the beautiful scenery of the sea. In the end, she was drenched by the huge waves. Her face immediately darkened. Be careful. A strong man with a short black beard suddenly rushed out from the side and blocked the young woman with his sword. He quickly rushed toward the strange beast opposite him with divine power. It had 6 legs and 4 wings, and its whole body was wrapped in flames. The giant beast's body was as strong as a small hill, towering in front of everyone. This frightening size was enough to make one shiver in fear. The strong man's face showed a trace of shock. He muttered something and waved his hand, and a long sword appeared in his hand. He swung his sword horizontally. The sword light carried divine power and rushed toward the giant beast that was charging toward him. However, it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. This little bit of power was insignificant in front of the giant beast. The giant beast flipped up from the water and tore the waves in front of it with its claws. With a splash, the water split from the middle, and the whole boat was torn apart by its claws. The woman in the green gauze couldn't help but scream again. She was slapped into the water by the huge waves. The strong man with a short black beard opened his eyes wide and shouted, "Miss!" He quickly jumped into the water to save the young woman, who knew that the giant beast would flip back and forth in the water, and huge waves would roll over. The splashing sound of the water was abnormal. The boatmen who fell into the water screamed in fear. They hurriedly climbed into the water, trying to get away from the giant beast as soon as possible. However, they were so weak. The moment the giant beast flipped in the water, it opened its mouth and sucked several boatmen to its mouth, and tore them apart effortlessly with its claws. The woman in the green gauze was soaked in the water, and her face was a little distorted from fear. She panicked and slapped the water surface, kicking her legs like a dog. She repeatedly screamed, "Mr. Shen, Mr. Shen." The robust man with a short black beard became a little anxious. He jumped out of the water in a hurry. Then, he took a few steps in the air, and arrived beside the green-robed woman. Then, he pulled her out of the water. The man brought the girl up into the air and quickly bounced up. However, in the next second, a huge wave came crashing down on them again, slamming them back into the sea. The angry roar of the giant beast echoed in his ears. The green-robed woman turned her head to take a look, and was so shocked that her jaw almost fell to the ground. He was almost within reach of the giant beast. As soon as she looked up, she could see the giant beast's huge face wrapped in flames. Its face was ferocious and its eyes were like copper bells. The green-robed woman shuddered. She couldn't help but shiver. "Let's go." The man made a prompt decision and pulled the girl out of the water again. "Mr. Shen, we..." Crash. A few huge waves slammed heavily on the top of their heads. The two unlucky ones had no way to resist this overwhelming force, and were heavily smashed into the bottom of the water by the huge waves. The green-robed woman even gulped down a few mouthfuls of water. She suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. "Damn it." The robust man cursed in a low voice, and his face became abnormally ugly. He didn't expect that he would encounter such a crisis on this trip to the Sea of Forgetfulness. He looked up and saw that several boatmen had died in this disaster. Chapter 4972. The dozen or so bodyguards he brought with him were either dead or injured at this time. Almost all of them were consumed by this giant beast. The man with a short black beard grits his teeth and takes out a small exquisite pagoda from his sleeve. He says in a deep voice, "Let's hide in this defensive artifact first." The woman in green muslin hurriedly nods and urges, "Mr. Shen, hurry, hurry." As long as they enter this defensive artifact, they can resist 1 or 2 attacks. The woman in green muslin raises her head and looks at the man in front of her with a pair of beautiful almond eyes full of expectation. Shen Nangui can't help but reach out and touch the woman's delicate and white cheeks. He smiles slightly and says, "Don't be afraid, we won't." Whoosh! The surging waves make Shen Nangui completely shut up. He hurriedly throws out the small pagoda in his hand. The two figures suddenly disappear in the sea. In the rippling sea, a small exquisite pagoda the size of a palm is bobbing up and down along with the waves. Suddenly, it is heavily slapped into the blue sea by a giant beast's claw. "Ao ao ao." The giant beast roars angrily twice. Using its 2 claws, it tosses the small pagoda that is emitting a faint halo back and forth as if playing with it. One moment it is tossed into the air, the next moment it is slapped into the bottom of the sea. It goes back and forth many times, making Shen Nangui in the exquisite pagoda feel very uncomfortable. Although this exquisite pagoda is a defensive artifact, the space inside is extremely small. The two of them are standing close to each other. At this moment, they are miserable. The saint beast outside was treating it like a toy, using its claws to pull it around. The entire small pagoda would shake and fall from time to time. The two of them were stuck in this pagoda, and following the constant shaking back and forth, they were about to vomit from it. Pa! The palm-sized face of the woman in green muslin hangs a trace of panic and fear. You hear something?" What sound? Shen Nangui's face changes again and again. He naturally heard it too. This subtle sound seems to be the sound of the defensive artifact cracking. The two of them look up. Sure enough, they see a trace of light coming in from the outside. The top of the pagoda seems to have a tiny crack, and now this crack seems to be expanding infinitely after being slapped by the beast's claws. Shen Nangui cried bitterly in his heart. In his entire life, he had never seen a giant beast with such great strength. With his bare hands, no, with his bare claws, he was able to destroy a defensive divine artifact that he had painstakingly built with a lot of manpower, energy, and refining materials that he had painstakingly built for months. Shen Nangui's heart ached so much that he almost wanted to vomit blood. However, at this moment, he could only hide in this small pagoda with his tail between his legs. "I'm fine." Shen Ning, who was once again flipped upside down by the beast's claws, comforted the pale girl in green gauze in his arms. "We'll be fine. This defensive divine artifact won't shatter so easily. It will take at least 2 to 4 hours for this defensive divine artifact to completely break apart. All we have to do is wait for this beast to get impatient and continue to slap it. Then we'll be saved. Don't worry." Shen Nangui comforted the woman in green. He didn't know if he was comforting her or comforting himself. As soon as he finished speaking, a few extremely frightening ka-ka-ka sounds came from the top of the tower. The two of them's face turned very pale. They looked at each other and saw a trace of panic in each other's eyes. Chapter 4973. Shen Nangui was speechless. He did not expect to be slapped in the face by the gigantic beast as soon as he finished speaking. He had just assured the lady in green that this defensive divine weapon could last for another 2 hours. Who knew now? It seemed that it could not even last 3 minutes. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of something breaking was touching the two people's twitching nerves. In a flash, the entire pagoda suddenly cracked. 4 to 5 rays of light penetrated the pagoda from above and around the pagoda. The entire exquisite pagoda had completely cracked open. At the same time, the gigantic beast seemed to be unable to bear the unusual torment in its stomach. It suddenly opened its mouth and roared. A few shining light balls flew out of its mouth. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a few people wrapped in a defensive divine weapon that flew out from within. "Quick!" the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hurriedly urged. Mo Lien, whose expression was cold, turned around and took out a small mirror that was filled with an ancient aura from her sleeve. She shone the mirror at the gigantic beast opposite her. Blinding rays of light converged into innumerable invisible threads that violently flung onto the gigantic beast's body. Seeing that the light-congealing mirror had jumped out to trap him again, Hun Dun gritted his teeth in hatred. He could not help but roar angrily as he shook his body, trying to get rid of the threads on his body. The rays of light converged by the light-congealing mirror wound around Hun Dun's body and bound him tightly. No matter how much Hun Dun roared, he could not break free from the bindings. Mo Lien suddenly turned around and raised her hand. The fragments of the exquisite pagoda flew into her palm piece by piece. She kept all of them in a storage talisman. She did not expect to pick up so many excellent god-level crafting materials on the first day she came out. She had to admit that her luck was really superb. Prince Mo felt a little elated, but he quickly focused all his attention on the gigantic beast of Hun Dun. This gigantic beast's willpower was really stubborn. They had been punching and kicking in its stomach for so long before it could not bear the pain and let them out. Even with the light-congealing mirror, it was very troublesome to completely seal it. No wonder the heavenly axiom wanted to seal it in the abyss at all costs. Releasing it would be a great disaster indeed. Mo Lien raised her hand and wiped her finger. A line of blood spilled out. The light-congealing mirror suddenly emitted a dazzling light that was comparable to the brilliance of the sun and the moon. With a whoosh, it leaped into the air. The entire mirror suddenly expanded by dozens of feet and became 3 to 5 times fatter. The power of the light completely suppressed the chaos beast. Soon, Mo Lien and He Chen's Saint energy landed on the giant beast and bounced the condensing light mirror over. With the help of the powerful holy light emitted by the condensing mirror, Mo Lien quickly sealed the chaos beast. But even so, Prince Mo's eyes were not calm and relaxed. He frowned slightly and looked down at the condensing light mirror in his hand. How long can this power be sealed? Clearly, the condensing mirror's holy light had a natural suppressive effect on chaos sacred beasts. However, the Chaos Beast was simply too powerful. It would be difficult for it not to charge out of the light condensing mirror again. Even if Emolien had placed a few more confinement seals on the condensing mirror, there was still no guarantee that the Chaos Beast would not be able to charge out. Ichin sighed softly. It seems that this seal is only temporary. If they could not think of a good way to get the best of both worlds, the Chaos Beast might come out to harm the world again after a while. At this moment, a bald little boy with a photon brain jumped out from the side. Chapter 4974. Don't kill it. Hun Dun isn't usually this anxious and violent. It's mainly because it has been locked up for too long, so it's a little irritable. This is easy to understand, isn't it? Yuan Shurchen chuckled. Understand my ass. An irritable and violent creature opened its mouth and swallowed them all. Fortunately, he and Emolien's group were tough, so they weren't chewed up. Otherwise, who could they find to reason with at this moment? It's definitely not like this usually. Congealing Mirror said to Emolien and the rest with a straight face. You guys were already too much when you destroyed everything in its stomach. Now that it's been sealed, don't hit it anymore, okay? Yuan Shurchen couldn't help but roll his eyes. He thought, I didn't expect this small congealing mirror to be such a compassionate Virgin Mary. Emolien didn't say anything and stuck several sealing talismans on the surface of congealing mirror. Then she turned to Yuan Shurchen and said, set up an array and seal it in the abyss of the sea. Shen Wu suddenly blocked GC and the rest who were trying to sneak away with his sword. The natives of Sin Kingdom were only left with 3 melons and 2 dates. Other than GC who had lost her ears, there were 3 middle-aged and old men. All of them looked emaciated. When the sea breeze blew, they couldn't help but shiver. What else do you want? GC let out a shriek, her face contorted in anger. Although the people in front of her all revealed their original handsome faces. In GC's eyes, they were simply like ferocious-looking devils. How could a man who could cut off her ears for no reason be a kind person? Moreover, they could even seal a Chaos Beast again. How could a few repulsive people from Sin Kingdom be their match? They were not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Nothing. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal smiled coldly. Hand over a strand of your life soul, and I'll consider sparing your lives. GC and the other 3 men from Sin Kingdom widened their eyes at the same time. They shook their heads and took a few steps back. Unfortunately, their backs were soon covered by a thick, transparent barrier. It was only then that he realized that, at some point in time, someone had set up a barrier around him, trapping him completely. GC and the others had nowhere to run, and a bad premonition arose in their hearts. What are you going to do? GC found that her voice was trembling when she opened her mouth. Emolien ignored her. She turned to Yi Chen and said, let them go to the undersea abyss and continue watching the chaos. The faces of GC and the others instantly turned pale. All right, go and contact Jojo. Leave these people to me. Just as the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal finished speaking, a few thuds could be heard. GC and the others trembled as they kneeled on the broken deck of the ship, their faces pale. Sirs, please don't do this. On the other side, the bald 3-year-old child was also crying loudly as he hung from the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's leg like a pendant. He shouted loudly, no, don't throw Lord Guangguang into the pit at the bottom of the sea again. What are you trying to do? Master Guangguang finally came out, and you want to throw Master Guangguang in again? No. Chapter 4975. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal shook his long leg, wanting to throw away the pendant clinging to his leg. Unfortunately, little Congealing Mirror's short limbs had great strength. This little fellow clung to his leg tightly and refused to let go. It was as if it had grown on his leg and could not be moved at all. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal twitched his mouth speechlessly. All right. Come down first and we'll talk. I won't. You bad people want to throw Lord Guangguang heartlessly into the seabed abyss, that lousy place where birds don't shit and chickens don't lay eggs. You want Lord Guangguang to continue lying at the bottom of the cold sea for millions of years. Do you think I'm stupid? I won't let go even if I die. On the other side, Mo Lien ignored the others and floated above the river of forgetfulness. She took out a communication jade talisman from her sleeve and frowned as she stared at it for a while. What was going on? There was no response from the communication jade talisman. He turned his head and looked at the speechless He Chen. Try using your communication jade talisman. You don't have to try. Lord Guangguang pouted and said weakly, earlier when you ganged up on Dun Dun, I blocked all of your divine senses. I'm afraid you won't be able to open your inner worlds for a while. Mo Lien, He Chen, and the others all glared at this little brat. I didn't do it on purpose. Lord Guangguang shouted stubbornly. How would I know? I thought you were going to kill Dun Dun. Although Dun Dun and I don't have much of a friendship, but we've been together for more than 1,000 years. No feelings, but there are feelings of companionship. Lord Guangguang hung pitifully on He Chen's leg and clung to his robe tightly. It wailed, don't throw us into the seabed abyss. We don't want to stay in the seabed abyss anymore. What do you know? If Dun Dun breaks out of the seal again, can you still suppress it? Mo Lien said coldly. No, it won't. It won't. Congealing Mirror shook its bald head vigorously and shouted, I swear in the name of the heavenly Tao. Dun Dun's nature is still very kind. It's just that sometimes it's too lonely, that's why it wants to come out. Zhuo Lanshan couldn't help but chuckle. He shook his snake tail and rolled his eyes. It's not like you didn't notice how many people it bit to death when it came out. But those people from the evil kingdom aren't good people either. Sir Guangguang weakly defended himself. Moreover, my Dun Dun can be taught slowly. It's still young. It'll be sensible after being taught. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal had already taken out his communication jade talisman. He frowned and said, even if my spiritual consciousness is blocked, what does this have to do with the communication jade talisman? Why can't I even send a message? Lord Guangguang pursed his lips and smacked his lips as he said, don't you know? Lord Guangguang, can block everything. That's right, including spatial teleportation. You are by Lord Guangguang's side, you can't even use teleportation talismans. The message talisman is also useless. He Chen glared angrily. He really wanted to beat this child to death. You are the artifact spirit of the ancient sacred artifact, Congealing Mirror. Legend has it that you have the ability to unlock the great godlock array. Why can't you unlock the shield? Seeing that the masters beside him were so angry that they were about to beat the child, Shenwu hurriedly went forward and asked, wanting to help Lord Guangguang out of this predicament. Congealing Mirror had a weak expression on its face. Chapter 4976. Prince Mo's expression froze. How can we break it? 7 days later, it will naturally be broken. Mo Lien waved her hand, and Congealing Mirror hugged Yuan Shurchen's thigh, crying out with a strong desire to live. Lord Light didn't do it on purpose. It's you fierce people who suddenly came here shouting to kill. Lord Light only wanted to protect himself. That was why he secretly set up the spirit lock shield. Was it his fault? He didn't want to do this, but these people in front of him didn't look like they were to be trifled with. It was scary. Yuan Shurchen was speechless. He raised his hand to persuade Mo Lien. It's useless even if you throw him into the sea now. How about this? Let's bring Congealing Mirror to Jojo. Let Jojo bring them into the star domain. Yuan Shurchen winked at Mo Lien. Mo Lien instantly understood. No matter how powerful chaos was, as long as it entered Jojo's star domain, it would have to acknowledge Jojo as its master. It wouldn't be able to do much. That seemed to be good too. Looking at Congealing Mirror's lack of intelligence, it was definitely not Jojo's match. When the time came, wouldn't it be easy for Lord Jojo to capture it? Who is Jojo? Where are you taking us? Congealing Mirror asked in a daze. Mo Lien glanced at it coldly. Congealing Mirror quivered. It was so scared that it crawled onto Yuan Shurchen's thigh, hugging his leg and crying out. I was just asking. Can I just ask? Emolienne turned her head, her gaze landing coldly on GC and the rest. At this moment, GC, Elder Zhou and the other 3 citizens of Sin Kingdom had already pulled out a strand of their soul, trembling as they offered it. Master, please spare our lives. If you have any orders in the future, we will not disobey. Sirs, please don't drive us back into the bottomless abyss. After saying this, old Zhou and the other 2 subjects of the Kingdom of Sin, along with great suzerain GC, repeatedly kowtowed to Emolienne, Shichen, and the others, earnestly begging for mercy. Now they were really scared to death. Was there really such a cold and heartless person in this world? With great difficulty, they were finally able to climb out of the gloomy and narrow underwater abyss, only to see the sunlight for a few minutes. These people wanted to chase them down to the bottom of the abyss again, to guard the cold bottom of the abyss, to guard the darkness. What a cruel heart. Emolienne looked at them coldly. After thinking for a while, she frowned and looked at He Shurchen. Zualanshan couldn't help but interrupt. Actually, their kung fu is it's fine to keep them to run errands or something. Emolienne sneered. I didn't expect that a cowardly little snake like you, who ran away at the sight of danger, would have compassion overflowing one day. But what? Zualanshan glared angrily, smoke coming out of his nostrils. Who's a coward? You junior, don't speak if you don't know how to speak. Go to the underwater abyss. What? The faces of the small condensing mirror and the people of Sin Kingdom instantly turned pale. They had already begged for mercy to this extent. This heartless man, could it be that he still wants to seal them in the underwater abyss? Seeing their bitter and sorrowful expressions, Yuan Shurchen could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth and explain, let's go and see if Qiao Qiao is still here. Chapter 4977. Previously, they were sucked into the Chaos Beast's stomach and rushed out of the abyss. They didn't know how many nautical miles they had traveled in the deep sea. Now, they were no longer near the abyss. Returning to the abyss wasn't to throw them in, but to see if the little stoic was still guarding there and hadn't left. Hu Jinshin patted Emolienne. We'll wait another 7 days at most. As long as they received news of Jojo, they would rush over even if they had to travel day and night. The holy spirit of the condensing mirror patted its chest and muttered to itself, as long as we don't throw Sir Guangguang into the abyss. Voila! After several sounds of water splashing, several disheveled people scuttled out of the sea. The woman in green gauze sighed in relief when she saw the tranquil surface of the sea. On the other hand, Shen Nangui's expression was very unsightly. He looked around and said coldly, Friends, shouldn't you return something that belongs to someone else? Where's that large beast the size of a small mountain? The woman in green gauze looked around and asked in terror, Could it be that that thing is your mount? If it was really their mounts, then they should really be made to pay for it. Not only did this large beast destroy their entire ship, but it also gave her such a huge fright. Before the woman could finish retorting, her voice gradually lowered. Her eyes were practically shining as she looked in the direction of Emolienne, Hu Jinshin, and the others. The young sirs were all as handsome as gods. They were simply celestial beings at first sight. Emolienne swept an indifferent glance over, and her gaze suddenly froze. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was just about to say with a smile, Who goes there? When his voice suddenly paused and he looked at the woman in green gauze with knitted brows. The woman in green gauze didn't think that death was imminent. She revealed an innocent smile and giggled. This is our Kingdom of Doruo's second state preceptor, Shen Nange. The woman had just finished speaking when she felt a tremendous force assault her. She instantly cried out in alarm, and her feet were suspended in the air as she flew forward involuntarily. Shen Nangui's hand was as fast as lightning. He reached out and grabbed her shoulder, firmly anchoring her body to a dilapidated plank of the ship. Who would have thought that another wooden vine would attack from the side and suddenly wrap around his wrist? With a forceful tug, Shen Nangue could only retract his hand in pain. He could only watch helplessly as the woman he had pressed against the deck of the boat cried out in alarm. Her body was lifted into the air, and she couldn't help but fall to the opposite side. Bang! The woman fell into the sea and swallowed 2 mouthfuls of salty seawater. Helplessly, she poked her head out of the sea and looked at Emolien, who was standing above her, with a look of inexplicable horror. She was a little confused and did not understand what was going on. Speaking of which, she had never met these handsome men before. Why would they? Attacking a weak girl like her as soon as they met? What kind of thing are you? Emolien's voice was as if he had been fished out from an ice cellar, so cold that there wasn't the slightest bit of warmth. He could tell at a glance that this woman's appearance was very similar to her Jojo. No, it couldn't be said that they were similar. Such a lowly wretch wasn't even fit to carry his Jojo's shoes. Although this woman in front of him looked somewhat similar to Jojo, her entire face looked rather uncoordinated. It gave people the feeling that it was a fake face. It was as if her original face was covered with a seamless and well-made human skin mask. At first glance, she really could be intimidated. Chapter 4978. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at the girl coldly and said with some doubt in his eyes, "She doesn't look like a human skin mask." What was going on? Why would a girl who deliberately put on a fake face and pretend to be Jojo appear in the sea of forgetfulness? There was definitely something fishy about this. He had to take these people down and interrogate them. Who are you? Why are you suddenly attacking others? Shen Nange was furious and could not help but curse. You and I don't know each other and have never met before. Why are you suddenly attacking? But when he was pulled by the wooden vines, his palm was almost broken. The pain was unbearable and he could not help but let go of Lily or Zero. Now that he saw Lily or Zero fall into the sea in a sorry state, Shen Nange was furious. These young people were too presumptuous. Why did they attack them the moment they arrived? Previously, it was clearly the giant beasts that they had attracted to harm them. They had even destroyed their ships for no reason. Now, they actually dared to attack them first? This was outrageous. The more Shen Nange thought about it, the angrier he became. He glared at Emolien and the others. However, they did not give him any explanation. One of the young men in a black shirt raised his hand and said, "Capture them first." Immediately, 3 burly men and a woman wrapped in a flowery headscarf pounced in their direction. Shen Nange was shocked and quickly activated his defensive shield. Several attacks had already landed on his body with a loud bang. The 4 people who attacked him were very strong. They were all above Divine Realm level 10 and were almost on par with Shen Nange. Therefore, Shen Nange, who was outnumbered, was unlucky. The girl with the flowery headscarf was GC. After she lost her ears, she did not look beautiful. She could only take a piece of flowery headscarf and wrap herself up. Now, the sound seemed to be coming from afar. She could hear it, but it was not clear. She saw old Zhou and the other 2 move, so she quickly followed to help capture them. After all, she had just recognized Emolien as her master. Naturally, she had to perform well in front of her master. In less than a few minutes, Shen Nange was pressed down by Zhou on his shoulder, and he knelt on one knee on the deck. With this press, the wooden board sank into the water. Half of Shen Nange's leg was submerged in the water, making him look extremely miserable. At this time, Lily Zero, who had fallen into the sea, was pulled over by Shen Wu and Snake Man again and thrown onto another broken wooden board. The plank sank, and Lily Zero almost slipped off the plank and fell into the salty sea again. She widened her eyes in horror and looked at Emolien, He Chen, and the others with a sorrowful expression. Her voice trembled with a trace of fear. Sirs, your skills are extraordinary. Why must you make things difficult for a weak woman like me? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was enraged. He raised his hand and slapped her across the face. Because she used too much force, the woman's neck bone was almost broken. She could even hear the sound of her neck bone cracking. Damn wretch. How dare he use a face that resembles Jojo's to make such a disgusting expression? It was too painful to look at. Drag him over. Emolien's voice was extremely cold, and a trace of coldness flashed through her phoenix eyes. Lily Zero couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 4979. She widened her eyes in horror and exclaimed, "You, what are you doing? What are you doing? Let go of me." Lily Zero was rudely thrown over and fell on the wooden board in a sorry state. Her legs were dragged in the water and her hands could only desperately hold on to the wooden board. Her face was filled with anxiety and she was completely confused. Are these people mentally ill? Otherwise, why would he suddenly deal such a fatal blow to her without distinguishing between right and wrong, beating and scolding her as soon as he saw her? Who did she offend? Speak or you. Emolien's voice was cold and his eyes were filled with a thick layer of killing intent. Congealing Mirror shrank to the side and did not dare to step forward. The low pressure emitted by this human was too intimidating. Even he, Lord Congealing Mirror, did not dare to make a sound and challenge that man's nerves that were on the verge of exploding. It was imaginable how miserable it was for Shenange and Lily Zero to face this man's immense pressure. What a terrifying man. Lord Guangguang chose to keep his mouth shut and obediently squatted on the side to count mushrooms. He did not dare to make a ruckus. Lily Zero hastily looked up and just so happened to meet Emolien's phoenix eyes that were as serene as a cold pond. Her entire body shuddered involuntarily. This man's gaze was too eerie and terrifying. In that brief moment of eye contact, Lily Zero felt as if her heart had been frozen. That feeling of panic came from the bottom of her heart, making it impossible for her to escape. You already said it before. We are the kingdom of Daluo. Before Lily Zero could finish her sentence, she was slapped twice by Emolien. Her whole face was inexplicably slapped on the wooden board and soaked in the sea with gravity. She felt as if there was a heavy stone pressing down on her head. She suddenly felt that it was difficult to breathe. She struggled on the wooden plank with her arms and legs in a panic. Lily Zero suddenly felt sad. Ever since she accepted the plan and was made into the most perfect Lily, she had always been raised like a princess. She had never suffered such pain and humiliation. She originally thought that such a beautiful face would bring her endless glory and hope. Who knew after half a year of transformation, she, who walked out of the kingdom of Daluo's territory, would be humiliated like this today? Lily Zero choked and coughed violently while crying. When she finally felt the pressure on her head lighten, her messy hair was lifted up by a force. She finally felt fresh air again. She desperately gasped for air and coughed until her lungs were about to explode. The man's cold voice rang in her ears. "How disgusting. Turn your face away. Don't use that face to look at me again." Because of her anger, Lily Zero's eyes immediately turned red. Big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't know what was going on. These people seemed to be complaining about her beautiful face. But this Lily Zero's IQ was obviously very low. Compared to her stupidity, second state preceptor Shenange was the first to understand. His rat eyes could not help but flicker slightly. He arched his body and asked in a deep voice, "May I know your identity?" Impudent. Chapter 4980. Who allowed a bug like you to get up? A middle-aged man from the kingdom of Sin slapped Shenangui's head without any explanation. Shenangui's legs went soft from the slap, and he fell back to his knees on the broken wooden board. Compared to Lily, Shenangue was in no way inferior. The two of them did not look at the almanac before they went out, and now they ran into Emolien and Hechen. They were really unlucky. After they entered the river of forgetfulness, they had yet to find their true master, and they had already encountered these people in front of them who were completely unreasonable. As soon as they came up, they beat them to death. This was truly the case of dying before they could even begin their journey. They had 18 lifetimes of bad luck. Shenangue was so angry that he bit out a mouthful of blood. He opened his mouth but could not make a sound for a long time. Lily Zero, who was beside him, was already trembling in fear. She could not help but crawl on the wooden board, trying to pull her legs out of the water. However, no matter how hard she tried, half of her body was still submerged in the water. Her wet body was very sticky and uncomfortable. Look who's here. I was wondering why it was so lively here. So it's the crown prince of the divine province. DKSK, sorry for not coming out to meet you. A mocking laughter came from afar and was carried by the wind into everyone's ears. Everyone was looking serious. When they heard the sound, they turned around and saw more than a dozen small ships, breaking through the wind and waves. They were moving very fast. Standing at the bow of the first ship was a tall and handsome young master in a green bamboo robe. His eyes were smiling as he looked in their direction, and the corners of his mouth held a faint sneer. When his gaze fell on Emo Lien, there was a hint of sharpness and a hint of mockery. Hichin was slightly taken aback, and whispered to Emo Lien, "Why is that kid here?" Emo Lien also shook her head in confusion. In just half a month, Ding Yun seemed to be getting more arrogant and domineering, and he was even more of an eyesore. Look at his bluff, he's really a good-for-nothing. Those who come have bad intentions, and those who are kind won't come. Hichin whispered with a smile, I feel that the way this kid looks at you is like looking at a dead person. He really wants to kill you. It's not like he's only been thinking about killing me for a day or two. Emo Lien snorted coldly and said indifferently, Let's see how capable he is, there's no need to say anything else. TSK, what is your highness doing? Ding Yun asked with a smile as he glanced at the disheveled woman sprawled on the wooden plank. At that time, the woman was lying on the wooden plank and had not turned her head, so he naturally could not see her face clearly. On the other hand, the robust man with the short black beard was forced to kneel on the wooden plank. Both of his legs were submerged in the water, and he looked even more embarrassed. Ding Yun curled his lips into a smile. Who is so bold as to provoke His Highness the Crown Prince's anger? Prince Emo looked at him coldly. Instead of answering, he asked, Why are you here? A short and thin elder stepped out from behind Ding Yun. His hawk-like gaze swept across the Crown Prince and the others, and he smiled sinisterly. Sect Master is already the master of the entire Forgetfulness River. Crown Prince of the Divine Prefecture, you'd better be more respectful when speaking to our master. When she said this, Emo Lien and Hichin couldn't help but be taken aback. What was going on? They had only stayed in the undersea abyss for a month, and the Forgetfulness River's sky had changed? Ding Yun waved his hand with a smile. Chapter 4981. His eyes flashed as he stared at Prince Emo for a while. Finally, he couldn't help but laugh. The Crown Prince and the Venerable Immortal entered the abyss at the bottom of the sea. They came out so quickly. Look at how jealous you are. Before Emo Lien could say anything, the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't help but mock her. Do you feel bad seeing us climb up from the bottom of the sea? You can't wait for us to live at the bottom of the sea forever. Ding Yun glanced at the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal with a grin. I can't wait for you to live together and never come out. What's with that look? The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal glanced at Emo Lien. Why are you talking to him? Emo Lien said expressionlessly. Take those two from the state of Daluo and let's go. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was speechless. Big brother, can I ask how we are going to leave now? In this vast sea, there are no boats and we can't enter the inner world. Are we supposed to swim to the shore or cough fly all the way back? Fuck, this is too much of a scam. Emo Lien threw him a look that said, Are you stupid? And silently took out a storage talisman from her pocket. There's a boat. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's eyes instantly lit up. He looked at Prince Emo as if he was looking at his own brother. It had to be said, when Emo Lien became reliable, he really was especially reliable. Last time in the Karst Cave, didn't you say that you wanted to learn from me and put more storage talismans and space containers on you? The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal coughed. I really don't have that habit. He was used to staying in JoJo's galaxy. He would wander around when he had nothing to do. Anyway, someone would take care of everything for him. Wasn't he just going out to fight? Emo Lien threw him off and took out a small boat from the storage talisman. Although the boat wasn't big, it was more than enough to carry the two of them and the 4 people from the city of Sin. Without another word, Guangguang Darren stepped forward and hugged Ma Shurchin's thigh, determined to be a leg accessory. He must not be thrown into the sea by them. Lord Guangguang finally came out, so he naturally wanted to go out and play. Not only did he want to play, but he also wanted to eat all the delicacies in the world. According to Dun Dun, the human delicacies were very good. It wasn't easy for him to escape from the ceiling formation, jump out of the abyss, and leave this broken place surrounded by water. How could he not enjoy his future life? It's all your fault. Hu Shirchen unhappily picked up the bald 3-year-old child and shook him a few times. If it weren't for the light-congealing mirror's shielding seal, how could they not even be able to use the communication jade talisman? In 7 days, he can recover naturally. Master Guangguang didn't want to either. The little fellow muttered and raised his hand to hug Hu Jinshan's arm tightly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't help but sigh. He wondered how the little stoic was doing. When he tossed her up, the little fellow looked like she was about to cry. She looked so pitiful that his heart ached for her. He really had to wait a few more days before he could contact her. How worrying. Let's go. Mo Lien and Hu Jinshan boarded the boat at the same time and turned to look at the 4 people from the city of Sin. GC nodded in understanding and said to the other 3, "Take these 2 with us." Lying in the water, Lily, Zero couldn't help but shudder. However, she heard Ding Yun say with a smile, "Wait a moment. Prince Mo, you are the crown prince of the Divine Province, the most honorable person in the 3 provinces. But this is the river of forgetfulness." Chapter 4982. This young master still has the final say in the river of forgetfulness, Cult Master Ding said with a smile and gave a look to his subordinates. The short, skinny old man suddenly dashed forward and reached out with a sinister face to grab Shen Nangui's head. GC naturally wouldn't let him do it. She dragged Shen Nangui away and, together with old Zhou and the other 2, struck out a palm at the thin old man. The thin old man chuckled coldly without any change in his expression. A pair of old hands that looked like chicken claws suddenly came out of his sleeves and viciously clawed at old Zhou in front of him. Old Zhou retracted his hand very quickly, but his sleeve was caught by the thin old man's claws. With a ripping sound, he looked down and saw 2 faint bruises on his arm. It was obvious that this old man's hands were dipped in poison. Seeing that the thin old man had already grabbed Shen Nangui's collar, GC kicked him with a gloomy face. If this kick landed, the old man would definitely spit out 2 mouthfuls of blood. This thin old man was only skilled in the art of poison, but his actual cultivation might be below them. The old man let out a strange laugh, then took out his hand and sprinkled a cloud of poisonous powder, throwing it in front of GC and the other 3. GC and the other 3 hurriedly held their breaths and quickly took a step back. However, GC's eyes were sharp and her hands were fast. She jumped back with Shen Nangue and flew to Emolien's ship. At the same time, Lily, Zero saw an opening and hurriedly jumped into the water. She flipped a few times like a dog. Emolien looked on coldly and didn't stop her. Lily Zero crawled to the feet of Ding Yun and the others in a sorry state and repeatedly shouted, Save me, young master, save me. I don't know them, I don't know why they." Lily Zero's voice suddenly stopped and she felt her body become light. Someone had wrapped a spirit binding rope around her neck and lifted her up in the air. She hurriedly stretched out her hands and grabbed the spirit binding rope around her neck. Her face was pale and she coughed a few times. Heh, no wonder His Highness the Crown Prince is so angry. Cult Master Ding's eyes flickered as he carefully sized up the woman in front of him. A faint sneer appeared on his lips. She looks between her eyebrows, there is a 60% to 70% resemblance. However, her demeanor and behavior are too different. Cult Master Ding sized up Lily Zero from head to toe and shook his head repeatedly. Where did you get the courage to imitate her? Lily Zero instantly felt a chill run down her spine. She could hear her heart thumping nonstop. She suddenly understood, could it be that the reason why the 2 young masters were so angry at her was because they knew the owner of her face? Actually, she had no idea who her face belonged to at all. He only knew that the state preceptor had said that the closer one could get to this face, the more honorable and wealthy one would be able to obtain a life of honor and wealth. She did it. She worked hard and stood out from the rest of Lily But what if her life instantly collapses the moment she leaves the Doro Kingdom's ancestral land? Wasn't this face beautiful? Wasn't it lovable? That was impossible. Lily Zero hurriedly struggled and cried out in shock. Young master, what are you saying? In the vast thousand realms, there were people who looked somewhat similar to each other, but there were some. How can you say that I'm imitating her? Ding Yun glanced at her with a smile. You're not imitating her? No. Lily Zero hurriedly shook her head and insisted that she didn't have any ill intentions of imitating others. Chapter 4983. Cult Master Ding could not help but sneer. He tightened the spirit-binding rope in his hand. Lily Zero suddenly felt her breathing tighten. She choked and coughed a few times. Her face was as pale as paper. No, kill cough. Lily Zero felt an abnormal sense of panic. She felt like she had just climbed out of a wolf's den only to fall into a tiger's den. This was definitely not her illusion. Lily Zero raised her head, trying hard to see the face of the man in front of her. However, she only saw a cold glint in the man's eyes, without the slightest bit of pity. Fear overflowed in Lily Zero's heart. She muttered to herself and shook her head. No, she could not be so unlucky, right? She had just come out of the Doro Kingdom's ancestral land. She had not even had a few days of comfortable and happy days. Was she going to die on the surface of the river of forgetfulness? Elder dear cry. This subordinate is here. The thin and short old man quickly retreated to Ding Yun's side and bowed respectfully with cupped fists. This cult master heard that you are best at the human face drum. Hearing this, the skinny old man's eyes lit up. He sized up Lily Zero, who was shivering all over, and cupped his hands with a smile. Sect master, do you want me to make a beauty drum? It's a pity that this woman's face was soaked in potion before. The lines on her face are all destroyed. Even if you make a beauty drum, it won't look good. The perverted old man named Dear Cry licked the corner of his mouth and revealed a wretched smile. Cult Master Ding looked at Lily Zero with disdain. Then what's the use of keeping her? Lily Zero was so frightened that her entire body twitched in fear. She pulled her hands and screamed, Don't kill me, don't kill I have use. My face, that fake face of yours really is ugly to death. Cult Master Ding scoffed as he directly flung the person towards Emo Lien with a wave of his hand. The woman was about to crash into the boat. Under such gravity, she might even smash a hole in the boat under her feet. GC took a step forward and punched Lily Zero in the chest. Lily Zero sucked in a breath of cold air. She could clearly hear the sound of her sternum breaking. That sudden force sent her flying. With a splash, she fell heavily into the water. Young Master Ding chuckled and said, What an unromantic crown prince of Shenzhou. You don't even want a soft and warm body? TSK. Cult Master Ding sized them up a few times and said with a smile, Wow, why do you look so pale? Emo Lien glanced at him coldly. She was too lazy to talk nonsense with this person. He wanted to return to the abyss of the sacrificial sea to take a look, so how could he have the time to continue arguing with others? Unfortunately, this cult leader Ding's brain was probably not working well. Just a moment ago he was still smiling in the clear sky, but in the blink of an eye his face was clouded with clouds and thunderclaps. Let me guess, how many people are serving the crown prince of the divine land? Is it just these few people? TSK. Cult Master Ding muttered to himself. Suddenly, a cold glint flashed across his black eyes. If that's the case, then Your Highness, please stay for a chat. Emo Lien finally looked Ding Yun in the eye. The corners of her lips curled up slightly, and her phoenix eyes revealed a murderous intent. You're courting death. Chapter 4984. His cold words fell into Cult Master Ding's ears one by one. The anger in the latter's heart instantly erupted like a volcano, burning fiercely. Why was this person always acting like he was looking down on the common people, looking down on everyone from a high position? This was too disgusting. He knew that if he didn't kill this guy immediately in the lower star region, he would definitely cause trouble for him in the future. If that was the case, how hateful. Mo Lien narrowed his eyes at Ding Yun and became alert. Sure enough, Sect Master Ding raised his hand and waved it. Then, several tens of figures came out from behind him and rushed forward. He-Chin teased with a faint smile, "He still wants to stay for dinner, Crown Prince." Mo Lien pursed his lips and didn't say anything. The cold expression on his face had already revealed his terrible mood. This Ding Yun always thought that if he killed him, he would have a chance. However, the truth was that even if he deliberately planned to kill him, the result wouldn't be satisfactory. Seeing dozens of figures pouncing on him, GC nervously clenched the weapon in her hand and looked like she was ready to fight to the death. She had no choice. Even if she regretted it so much that her intestines turned green, her lifeline was in the hands of that crown prince. If she dared to betray him and turn to the enemy, then she would definitely die without a burial place. Right now, the enemy had a lot of people, while she only had a few people here. She, Old Zhou, and the other two were already exhausted. She could only fight them head-on? GC had just thought of this when she saw the Crown Prince of the Divine Province, standing at the bow of the ship, suddenly raise his hands. A large number of squeaking things came out from his sleeves. Everyone took a closer look and couldn't help but show a bit of surprise. It turned out that the things that came out from Prince Mo's sleeves were hundreds of thousands of mechanical wooden birds. They crashed into the dozens of people rushing from the opposite side. Even Ding Yun was shocked and hurriedly shouted, "Get out of the way." But how could he make it in time? Ding Yun's dozens of subordinates were rushing toward Mo Lien's ship and just happened to meet the hundreds of thousands of mechanical wooden birds. When the two sides collided, the mechanical wooden birds spat out black lines of fire and suddenly fell on them. His speed was incomparably fast, leaving no time for anyone to react. As a result, the crowd saw black flames ignite on the bodies of the dozen or so people who had rushed over. The flames quickly spread throughout their bodies and wrapped them up in a ball. Black flames burned on their bodies silently and oppressively. The dozen or so people didn't even have time to shout before they turned into ashes and disappeared under the pitch-black flames. Lily, number 0 shuddered and looked at Second State Preceptor Shen Nange for help. How unlucky must she be to run into the Crown Prince of the Divine Land as soon as she left the clan grounds. With just a few words, he burned the person to ashes. After spitting out the black flames, the mechanical wooden bird continued to flap its wings and rose high into the air. Pairs of mechanical eyes suddenly turned around and stared coldly in Ding Yun's direction. The latter shuddered in his heart, and without another word, he ordered, "Fire!" There were at least 300 archers on the dozen or so ships he had brought with him today. Once the order was given, the archers immediately got into position and shot hundreds of arrows at the mechanical birds in the sky. Dang, 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 dang. After a few clangs, the arrows that were released fell to the ground one after another as if they had hit an iron plate. They fell into the sea in disorder and made a series of splashes. Chapter 4985. Cult Master Ding cursed in his heart and suppressed the anger in his heart. He couldn't even kill a row of mechanical birds released by others, so how could he create Mo Lien? This Mo Lien was getting more and more abominable. Don't bother about those birds. Activate the defensive shield and rush over, Ding Yun said in a low voice with a cold face. No matter what, he had to make that guy stay here today. He had waited so long for this guy to be alone. If he missed this opportunity, there wouldn't be another one. If he didn't seize this perfect opportunity, when would he? While thinking, Ding Yun waved his hand and Elder Looming rushed over with a dozen devil cult disciples. A cold smile hung on his gloomy old face. He raised his hand and sprinkled a handful of fine powder over. Mo Lien didn't even frown. He looked coldly at Looming and the others who were rushing over to court death. He raised his hand to block He-Chin, who was rubbing his fists and preparing to go forward. In a flash, Mo Lien formed a seal with his fingers. Several ink-colored lotuses floated around him and gathered to form death lotus seals. He threw them at Elder Looming and the others without any explanation. Looming's eyelids twitched and he hurriedly stepped back to avoid them. He didn't even need to touch the Death Lotus seal. He could feel the majestic power from a distance. It wasn't something a small poison master like him could withstand. Bang, 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 bang. The lotus seals landed in the crowd, causing them to vomit blood and fall to the ground. Instantly, they were crushed by a heavy force and their bones were broken. Their bodies cracked like broken bones. Crown Prince Mo's methods were ruthless. Even when he was indiscriminately killing people, his countenance was still serene, without the slightest ripple. It was so calm that it was as if he was looking at a group of weak ants. In fact, to him, these people were indeed insignificant. They dared to block his path and provoke him time and time again. They were already prepared to die. Ding Yun's eyes flickered and a trace of emotion flashed past his eyes. Compared to a month ago, Mo Lian's cultivation seemed to have inexplicably improved by leaps and bounds. What was going on? Could it be that he and the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal had a fortuitous encounter in the undersea abyss? Hu Shurchen blinked and revealed a curious expression. Your strength seems to have increased by quite a bit. Could this person be a monster? Other people would only advance by a small level or half a level. He, on the other hand, had advanced to a new level with a single leap. However, it must have something to do with the ancient Emolien's soul that Jojo had found. Emolien was really lucky. It was mainly because he had found a very good wife. His luck was super good, and this guy had also risen to the heavens with her. Every time he thought of this, it made his teeth ache. No wonder young Master Ding always thought of ways to kill him every time he saw him. Jealousy, pure jealousy. It was indeed very infuriating. Let's go. Emolien turned around and shouted at GC, Old Zhou, and the others, who were stunned into a few blocks of wood. Only then did GC and the others come back to their senses, their eyes carrying traces of reverence. Their master was too powerful. They had never seen such a powerful person when they were in the undersea abyss. With one move of the lotus mark, the all-encompassing pitch-black lotus fire annihilated so many people in a matter of minutes. Super powerful. Just now, GC and the others were still muttering in their hearts, wondering if they had recognized him as their master too early and did not look at the situation. Chapter 4986. At this moment, they were incomparably glad that they had followed GC's prompt decision to cast aside their pride and acknowledge Mo Lian as their master. Judging from the Divine Province's Crown Prince's appearance, if they had hesitated just a little bit more, they might have lost their lives long ago. To them, what dignity and what honor and disgrace were truly too insignificant compared to their own lives. They had lived in the underwater abyss for so long and been imprisoned for so long. Day and night, they couldn't see the light and had no future. After finally escaping from that ghastly place with great difficulty and starting anew, there truly wasn't anything to be particular about. They just wanted to continue living. Now, it seemed that acknowledging this powerful master wasn't a loss at all. Cough, 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 cough. Several demonic cult disciples waved their hands to disperse the smell of smoke and fire, saying, Cult master, they cough, cough. Cult Master Ding gloomily stared in the direction of the ship's departure. He stared for a long while before looking up at the sky. The flock of mechanical birds in the air had already chased after the Crown Prince with a flurry of noises. The remains of several mechanical birds were scattered on the deck, and there was still a faint wisp of black fire lingering around them. Don't touch it. Cult Master Ding abruptly reprimanded when he saw a disciple reaching out to grab the remains, inwardly cursing, idiot. If he directly used his hand to grab the remains of the mechanical birds, the faint wisp of black fire could follow his fingers up his arm and climb all the way up until it swallowed him whole. Mo Lian, this fellow, was just this kind of malicious person. Even though he abandoned the remains of these mechanical birds and left, he still harbored malicious intentions. The enemy was becoming more and more difficult to deal with. How should they deal with it? Cult Master Ding's face was grim as he turned to look at Elder Deercry standing next to him and instructed him in a low voice. Achoo! Sir Jojo rubbed his nose and tugged at the furry cloak covering his body. Putting down the medical book in his hand and looking outside the pavilion, the little stoic muttered to herself, Who's scolding me? Third Mississippi, Third Mississippi, the palace servant's soft calls entered Arbor's ears, and the little stoic looked up. Outside the pavilion, a slender woman walked in from afar. When she was still a few dozen meters away, she bowed to her. The young crown prince consort opened her mouth and yawned absent-mindedly. Who is it? These past few days, Yuan Zhen had been serving this little stoic crown princess by her side, so she was somewhat familiar with her temperament. Every time she spoke in such a casual manner, there would be a hint of impatience hidden in her voice. This was the displeasure of being disturbed. The lady outside the pavilion is the third daughter of the talisman aristocratic family, the Qi family, Miss Qi Liren. Does the crown princess want to meet him? She's here to compete with me in charms? Arborest. Yuan Zhen coughed and shook his head. That's not it. Third Miss should be here to greet you. The Qi family is indeed the largest talisman aristocratic family in our Zhangzhou, and this third Miss is also a black-level great talisman practitioner, but, in fact, many of the young ladies in large patrician families didn't care that much about cultivation and strength. Who would be in a hurry to compete with others? Ultimately, they had to get married. As long as a woman could maintain her beautiful appearance and prolong her life to accompany her husband in the future, that was enough. Not everyone was as exotic as you, the crown princess, who had to keep pace with men in everything. The little crown princess was expressionless. Since she's not here to compete, then there's no point in meeting her. I won't see her. Yuan Zhen. Chapter 4987. Ant was simply a bit speechless. Normally, when His Majesty interacted with the little lady, they were always chatting and laughing, as if they got along very well. Who knew that when it was her turn to be alone with the little lady, she would feel like breaking down before she could even say 3 sentences. She really didn't know how His Majesty could tolerate this oddball little stoic's brain. Arbor glanced at Yuan Zhen beside him. Do you have anything else to say? This servant was actually speechless. Then should we drive her away? Yuan Zhen probed the little crown princess. The little stoic hastily nodded and picked up that medical book again. Drive her away. She can come if she wants to compete. Drive her away if she doesn't want to compete. She didn't have the free time to chat with these orioles and swallows everywhere she went. If she had the time, she might as well take an afternoon nap to make up for it. Yuan Zhen somewhat sympathized with the third young lady. This third miss of the Qi estate had probably never seen such an oddball little crown princess. Ant quickly walked out of the gazebo and stopped in front of the third young lady, who was standing with downcast eyes. Qi Liren curtsied, and the maidservant Xiaoju behind her hastily stepped forward and also curtsied before retreating behind her miss. Yuan Zhen returned a half curtsy and coughed lightly, saying, It's like this. If third miss doesn't have anything else to say, please return first. The crown princess is busy right now. Qi Liren couldn't help but be startled, and she slightly raised her eyes to look at the figure inside the gazebo. Busy? The little crown princess was currently sitting there leisurely flipping through a book. Yuan Zhen said with a serious expression, The crown princess is busy. She said that if third miss is free, you can take a stroll in the nearby garden. How could the crown princess say something so courteous? Aunt Yuan Zhen lowered her eyes to hide her tired expression. This was all for the sake of the Qi family. The best strategy was to say a few soft words to the third young lady and send her away as soon as possible. Qi Liren was startled, and she politely curtsied to Yuan Zhen. Thank you for your trouble, Aunt. Since the crown princess isn't free, then Liren will take her leave first. Third miss, please. Yuan Zhen praised her in her heart. As expected of a well-educated young lady from a great aristocratic family. She didn't continue to pester her endlessly and went forward to cause trouble. Otherwise, it wouldn't look good for both sides. How should she put it? With such a willful little crown princess, her aunt was at her wits' end. Seeing that he had tactfully left, the little stoic nodded in a good mood. She picked up a plate of fruits and forked a piece into her mouth. As long as no one was blind enough to provoke Jojo-sama was usually an easygoing person. Yuan Zhen bowed slightly. Crown Princess, would you like me to bring you a bed so that you can bask in the sun and take a nap? The young Crown Prince consort nodded expressionlessly. that's fine too. Yuan Zhen was speechless. She obviously agreed with this idea, but she had to put on a, "it's just SOSO" expression. She really lost to this little crown princess. As Qi Liren walked past the long corridor across from them, she glanced at the gazebo from the corner of her eye. She saw the palace maids hurriedly bringing over a carved bed from who knew where. "Miss, this crown princess is putting on too much airs." The maidservant Xiaoju couldn't resist pursing her lips. She really thinks that our Phoenix Emperor City's imperial palace is her family's back garden. Qi Liren knitted her brows and said aloofly, "Xiaoju, don't speak carelessly." She mainly came today to see this crown princess of the divine province and didn't plan to strain her relationship with her. Since the crown princess wasn't willing to see her, she also didn't need to approach her. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.